Hello and welcome to Flix and Chill with me, Luke. Today I have a very special guest, and he is a person that's very special because I've never actually spoke to him before this podcast, and his name is Mike. So, Mike, please introduce yourself.
Hold on, everybody. I'm Mike Whildin. I am on the 15 Years Later podcast and blog. Our podcast is also partnered with the SPDM crew, like yours is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, from the Chicago suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, nice to meet you, Luke. It's we've been going back and forth trying to set this up for kind of a while.
Yep,
So it's nice to finally get this going.
exactly. No, nice to meet you too. And yeah, as you mentioned, so far I've recorded all the people from Sift Pop. So I would usually get to hear them, usually get to speak to them, text with them, like on more like personal basis, quote unquote. But you are the first like tabula rasa kind of guy. I have no idea about what I'm about to get into. So that's actually kind of cool. I like that. You
Okay.
know,
So then you haven't listened to our podcast yet.
I have not. No, not yet. Not yet.
It's
It's
fine.
on my
It's fine.
queue. It's on my queue.
Just teasing you.
Nah, I know. I know. So you mentioned you're in like Chicago suburbs. So, but before we go into that, give us a bit of more about what makes Mike Mike. Because from what I understand, you also love movies. But beside movies, what would be your like hobbies? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? If you were to describe Mike in a couple of sentences to people, what would you say?
Hmm. A couple of sentences is kind of tough because I'm a short story long kind of guy, as I
Feel
often
free.
say on my on our podcast that I have with Tim Larson.
Hmm.
So yeah, I do like telling the long versions of stories. Definitely a storyteller. Enjoy
Hmm.
that. Enjoy, making people laugh, sharing, whatever I've got with that. Love any kind of creativity.
Hmm.
Not necessarily saying I'm the most creative person, but I love just the creative expression of people. So whether it's movies, whether it's comic books, just books, TV
Hmm.
shows. I passively kind of get into art. Professional wrestling, I'm a big fan of. There's a lot of storytelling there, of course. I mean, the whole thing is storytelling.
Hmm.
Um, Drawing, music, whatever you can think of. My favorite thing to do in a video game generally is the create a player option or create a team, create a whatever. So
Yeah.
that's my vibe as far as what I like. Um, and everything kind of stems off of that, I guess. I also am a big fan, I'm a big sports fan.
Hmm.
I'm trying to see a baseball game in all 30 major league stadiums.
Oh, nice. How is
And
that
I'm a
going?
little good. I'm a little over halfway. I've made a lot of progress over the last few years.
Hmm.
Part of that is due to my job that allows me to travel.
Hmm.
I've been doing that for the last couple of years, but part of it's just been good timing and planning and, a little bit of luck. So,
Hmm.
well, yeah. And then I'm a big family person too. I'm pretty close to my family and,
Hmm.
we have all been through a lot together. So
No, of
that's
course.
important.
That's yeah. No, that is 100% important. Okay. Okay. So so since you're from like Chicago area, I'm guessing Chicago Cubs. NHL. Do
Hmm.
you follow ice hockey at all?
Yeah.
NHL. Okay. So do
Yeah.
you support all the Chicago clubs, or do you have some other teams you would support?
I just talked to Hilty about this on Sports Ball
Hmm.
not too long ago. Yeah, I mean I'm always kind of there for Chicago teams,
Hmm.
but I do root for others too. With baseball, I'll root, I mean, not really root, but I like almost every baseball team. I love the sport as it is.
Hmm.
Football, I have this very strange, probably attachment to the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no
Okay.
reason for that other than they're, perennial underdogs and their mascot is a jaguar. That's the entire thing.
And Jacksonville, that's Florida, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
there's no reason to have any like for Jacksonville. It's just no offense if anybody's from Jacksonville. I've never been to Jacksonville, so maybe it's been there. But that's my point though. Like it's just, oh, Jaguars, cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm a big dinosaur nerd. So as soon as the
Mm-hmm.
Toronto Raptors came out in the late 90s, I became a big fan of them too.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there are various other teams I'll root for here and there just because I like their mascot or their city or whatever. But For the most
Yeah,
part, yeah, I'm in the corner of Chicago teams. But number one, number two, number three, number four, and so on is all just the Cubs, and then there's everybody else.
I see. I see. A big Cubs fan and also a big dinosaur
Yeah.
fan. All right. So you must have been over the moon with the Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was maybe 5 years old when the first one came out.
Hmm.
And I remember my mom had seen it in theaters before I did and kept telling me how scary it was. And I went and thought it was awesome. There was one part that kind of made me jump, and it was just because it was a surprise, not so much scary,
Hmm.
um, but I absolutely loved it. And then a few years later, when the second one came out, and I had learned more about the world,
Hmm.
my sister took me to see the Lost World Jurassic Park, and it scared the heck out of me.
Really?
I don't know why. Like
Hmm.
I'll watch it now, and I think it's great, but for some reason that movie just terrified me. So it's strange. But yeah, no, I do enjoy those a lot.
Hmm.
However, if you're watching Jurassic Park with me for the first time, you're gonna have to put up with me pointing out a few dinosaur errors.
I see. So what is the most like prevalent one in let's say in the first one in Jurassic Park?
Mm. I mean, there's going to be a lot of whole like feathers and all that stuff. I'm
I
not
see.
even going to
Yeah.
worry about that right now.
Hmm.
But bigger deal to me was there's two of them.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's another thing a lot of people complain. Oh, Jurassic Park, this wasn't in the Jurassic. That's no, like you get the idea. They took a bunch of dinosaurs, threw them in. I'm not worried about that. They didn't go back in time.
Yeah.
My two big complaints there are Velociraptor should have been called either Deinonychus or Utahraptor because those animals, which
Hmm.
are Velociraptor cousins, were actually closer to the size they're portrayed in the movie.
Hmm.
The Velociraptor itself was maybe, just a couple of feet tall, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall.
Okay.
And then Dilophosaurus, the whole thing with the venom and the stuff on the side, the little flaps, all completely just made up from a lizard. And I get why Steven Spielberg did it for movie
Hmm.
reasons, but um, Dilophosaurus was also a lot taller, a lot not just taller, but a lot bigger than that. It didn't need to. Are we allowed to mildly swear on this?
You can swear even more profoundly. You can
Okay,
swear all you
well,
want.
fine. Um, Dilophosaurus didn't need the flaps or the venom or anything because it could just run you down and kick your ass.
Okay.
It could bite you, it could run, it could claw you. It was the one of the larger animals of its time period,
Hmm.
probably about 20 feet long, and it just yeah, it didn't have that stuff because it didn't need it.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know if they've discovered anything since, the 90s, but I know that they just kind of threw that in there. I'm like, it's not Dilophosaurus. That part of the movie's cool,
Hmm. Hmm.
but dinosaur air. So, anyways,
No, I understand. And what is your opinion on the Jurassic World movies?
um, I really enjoyed the first one. I
Okay.
like there were a lot of cool callbacks to it and everything.
Hmm.
And I like the fact that the the T-Rex is the same one, like
Yeah.
canon wise, throughout all of them.
Hmm.
Uh, they start to get a little, they start getting further and further from dinosaurs and more so just towards the we're gonna create our own dinosaurs, which
Hmm.
is good and bad. It's kind of like I think that is kind of the natural progression of
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
But I was really excited for Dominion, and I did enjoy seeing all the cast members come back, but I did not care for the movie. I just remember sitting in the theater thinking, like, this is not good.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
it's hard for me to not enjoy a movie. And I was just kind of like, I'm good. Well, I mean, I'm gonna try and enjoy this for what it is, but like, this is just, I could tell this is not a good movie. As soon as that first locust came down, I'm like, oh.
Because that's what we
So,
wanted from the end of trilogy, all subplot about locusts and corporate espionage and like all that, and controlling what was it, the wheat? Just,
yeah, and like the whole like, oh, this is gonna destroy the world until unless our heroes succeed at the,
hmm.
okay. Like I'm kind of, I don't know. That's a pretty tired trope unless it's, I think there are enough movies that are, Independence Day or any, superhero movies like Marvel movies where like especially the Avengers where it's like Ultron is sending this, city as a comet towards the planet trying to kill it. Okay, yeah, that's something that you would have superheroes try and stop,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Or, you try and blow up the alien ship or whatever. But like, not every movie's uh big crux has to be, oh, the world is gonna end. Like,
Hmm.
come
Hmm.
on, just can we just maybe back off that a little bit? It doesn't have to be every movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I mean, the first three, the first Jurassic Park wasn't about like, oh, we're gonna save the world. It's like, oh, well, there's gonna be a big problem if they get these
Hmm.
off the island, but it wasn't, oh, we're gonna save, it's gonna end the world. So it was a little more blatant about that whole thing. Also, locusts, like, come on, man. The corporate espionage again, that part I didn't have as big a problem with just because it was like that's kind of the natural progression of, I mean, even from the back in the first one,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
So I do like them following that thread a little more, but
Hmm.
whatever. Also,
No,
the raptor that could swim thing was weird, but whatever.
yeah, that's no. Less we say about Dominion, the better, I think.
Fair enough. Am I saying too much? I'm sorry.
No, 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 not you, the movie. Just the movie. It's like I didn't have as high, like I didn't have high hopes for it whatsoever, even from the trailers. And when I finally, so that's why I didn't even bother to go to the cinema. And when I finally watched it, I was like, Jesus Christ. And like I'm fine with most of the Jurassic movies, but the last two, like the Jurassic World movies, tough, very tough.
Well, yeah, like I said, I really like the first Jurassic World
Hmm.
as kind of fan service to the others.
Yeah.
I'm the second one, fine, whatever,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. But yeah, no, the last two just kind of were like, eh. But that Dominion especially, oh. Anyway,
Agreed. Agreed.
let's move on from that.
That's fair. So you mentioned you're from like Chicago area, and this is going to be interesting because I already had Mike on from Chicago. So I'll ask you the same
hmm
question. If I were to ask you another Mike, by the way, from Chicago, which do you have any other guys by but Mike's there? I don't understand this. Anyway.
Michael was the most popular name for baby boys for like 27 out of a 30-year span, which I fell right in the middle of. I mean, it
Hmm.
was, they're gonna be the most Mikes probably around my age,
Hmm.
out here. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm positive there are plenty of them.
Mike and Proud. That's good. Now, like, so if I were to ask,
Yeah, sure, I guess. I
if
don't know
I were
about
to
proud, but
ask,
like, yeah, it's fine.
eh, like, it's a nice name. I'm not, it's a great name. It's a good
Yeah,
name.
sure.
So if I were to ask, I want to, come to Chicago for let's say a week or so for a nice holiday. What would you recommend me? What do I need to see? Where do I need to go? Where would we go for like a nice meal? Do you have any recommendations or places you enjoy?
My cousin from Arizona is coming to visit Chicago for the first time, so I'm actually thinking about a lot of this right now.
Nice.
If I were to sell it to you, I'd tell you come during the summer.
Okay.
It's just warm months because I mean, unless you're cool with, the snow, there's and well, the cold, I should say.
Hmm.
But because when you live here, it has its perks even in the cold. But if you're visiting, you'd want to come during the summer.
Hmm.
I will throw out Wrigley Field and the Chicago Cubs. I mean, there's nothing like a trip to Wrigley Field. There's no sports stadium. There's no team with a home game that feels quite like Wrigley Field.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Chicago's got everything. It's the third largest city, in the States, and the States are really big. So, if you like art, you've got all kinds of art. I mean, obviously the Art Institute, but there's a lot of just art on the streets. Everybody knows about the Bean. I
Hmm.
actually saw the Bean for the first time like a year ago,
Nice.
and I've lived here all my life. Go figure. And then, I mean, if you like comedy, there's a great comedy scene, both in the city and in the suburbs here.
Hmm.
Sports, there's plenty of sports. There's plenty of medicine, really good medicine here. A lot of hospitals in Chicago. There's any industry you could really think of, honestly.
Hmm.
Food. I mean, the food in Chicago, I will say this with one great exception, is phenomenal.
Okay.
Obviously there's the deep dish pizza that's all the Chicago style stuff, whatever. But culturally there are so many different like there's so many different ethnic contributions from so many different walks of life and so many different parts of the world.
Hmm.
So you can find anything food wise.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm not a fan of is the Chicago style hot dog.
Remind me,
I
what
went
is
into this
that?
on my podcast a little bit. It's so Chicagoans are really, really proud of this for whatever reason, but it's a hot dog with mustard, relish, a long pickle spear,
Hmm.
and I think one other thing on it. And it's all the stuff that I don't like, put it on a
Let's
hot
see.
dog, basically.
Okay.
And so, but if you're at like a baseball game, just put whatever you want on your hot dog. I don't
Hmm.
think it really matters. I think you should be able to eat whatever you want, but just don't outwardly display it to people.
I
But
get
yeah,
it.
food's fantastic.
Hmm.
Just walking around, I mean, Lake Michigan, Navy Pier is just a great place to just hang out.
Hmm.
And some of the architecture too is fantastic. If you go up into the Sears, or especially if you go up into the John Hancock, which is not as tall as the Sears, but it's a better view.
Hmm.
You can go and view the city from there, and it's yeah, it's great.
Have you been to Sears?
What's that?
Have you been to the Sears building?
Yeah, I've been a couple times. I've been to both of those buildings. I went last year.
Hmm. Must have been pretty good because they are quite. How tall are they again?
Oh, I don't know. I know that Sears, which, well, they changed their name to the Willis Tower, and I don't know if it's something different now, but it's everybody in Chicago, it's the Sears Tower.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, all I know is that there was one point when it was first built, it was the tallest building in the world. I
Yeah.
don't, there are other taller buildings now, but that I guess can kind of give you an idea. Is it out? It's taller than the Empire State Building, so
That's pretty tall then.
I think I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Okay.
No, I'm not. No, I'm like 90% sure on that, but there's room for
Hmm.
that. But yeah, it's really tall.
No, that sounds awesome. And again, like even Mike recommended a couple of places. Chicago sounds quite cool, and obviously it's a large area, so I would
Mhm.
imagine there's so much to see.
Well, I in my traveling for work, I had a couple of stints in Boston, and I
Hmm.
absolutely love Boston. Before I went, my brother told me that Boston was kind of like a mini Chicago, which I feel
Hmm.
like Boston people would probably resent a little bit, but there is a similar vibe. It is really cool. You can get a lot of really good stuff in Boston. It does have not the same, but a similar feel.
Hmm.
But I've had friends from Boston that have visited Chicago, and all of them are like, "Oh, I love this place. I love Chicago. Chicago's great." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess it is pretty cool, isn't it?" So it kind of made me appreciate my hometown a little more.
Hmm. No, it sounds good. And again, I've never properly tried, or no, not even properly. I don't think I ever tried the deep dish pizza, but I know of it,
Hmm.
and I know how divisive it is. So you are all for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like a traditional pizza,
Hmm.
but once in a while, yeah, deep dish is good for once in a while, and like
Hmm.
as long as I'm not too worried about the health ramifications, which lately I have been,
Yeah.
I could order a small deep dish, just like a 10-inch deep dish pizza, and that's like gonna be 3 or 4. Yeah, I could polish off a regular, like a 10-inch just regular pizza myself. Not
Hmm.
proud of that, but it's just it's really good.
Hmm.
But the nice thing with the deep dish is it is very filling, so you could just have one slice and get like pretty full from it,
Yeah.
maybe two. So
Hmm.
you can still, you can get some mileage off of that. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned all of this. I was dating a girl for a little bit, and I took her on kind of a little Chicago tour, and all the things that you're mentioning, like the Sears, John Hancock, I mentioned too, the deep dish pizza, the bean. These are all things that I like did with her. That I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not like I haven't either I haven't done this in a while, or I haven't, done this with like the John Hancock I hadn't been in before. Actually, maybe I had, but there are things I just hadn't appreciated for a while about my
Hmm.
city. I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. It's a cool place. So about a year ago, all of the things that I'm talking about, I experienced all around the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No,
since
that's
then
it's
I've
always the
ordered.
thing, isn't it? Like you don't truly appreciate where you live because everything is so close. So no matter where you live, it's like, yeah, I'll get to it eventually. And then when it's a holiday time, you travel someplace else. And then, the next year you travel someplace else. And then people come to where you live and like, oh yeah, you must have been there many times, right? And then you're like, actually, no. You know what? Let's go there.
Mhm.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It does make it more fun when people visit you, though.
I think you're muted.
Not on purpose. Can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you. So no, Chicago sounds pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So and let's ask this, right? If you had or have you ever been on Tinder?
Unfortunately, yes.
And so yeah, we kind of covered it, but is there anything else? Is there anything else you would like to add? Like, if you, what would your the Tinder profile be? What do what would your be like? My, Mike, things, personality traits.
Let me look at it here.
All right.
Geez. This is probably not gonna last too long anyway, but all right, let's see. Yep, traveling healthcare worker, that's me. Finally back home for a while. Still, that's me. Lover of breakfast, baseball, exploring, and being a dork. And then I talk about the Zoom movie group that I'm in. I don't know if I told you about that. And then at the
No.
end of it, I put short story long kind of guy. So there you go. I
So
guess
pretty
I did
much,
cover it.
everything we've kind of touched upon already, except for the
Yeah.
Zoom movie group. So what is that?
So, the other guy that I do this, the 15 years later
Mm-hmm.
blog and podcast with, Tim Larson, was my favorite teacher from high school.
Mm-hmm.
I can get into that whole thing later. Anyways, he during the pandemic created a Zoom movie group where his cousin and then a few of his friends will get together just every Sunday night on Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and it works kind of like a book club. They choose a movie of the week. It's based on a category that they choose. As far as like what to select from, and then everybody watches that movie and then gets together and discusses it. And they have
Okay.
like a whole, whoever chose the movie kind of directs the meeting. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that for a year and a half now.
Nice. So is it like
I
once a
came
month?
in, no, every week.
Oh, every week.
Um,
Oh.
and so I have a much greater appreciation for movies now.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of changed the way I, watch movies and appreciate movies and everything. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, they were doing that since 2020. I just came in on it at the end of 2022, in August then. So they were already 110 movies into this thing, by the time I joined.
Nice. What is your
We've
favorite
lost a
movie?
member, we've gained a member, and so
Uh, yeah. What is your favorite movie you were introduced to because of this group? Or, you had to watch it because of this group?
I wasn't introduced to it here, but the movie I came into was The Departed. The week
Oh,
that I
nice.
joined was The Departed, and this is while I was in Boston, and I had just
Mm-hmm.
like gone and seen the Capitol a couple days ago, or a couple days before. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I can be a little selfish about it, my first pick was Almost Famous,
Mm-hmm.
which I really did enjoy. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think the one that keeps kind of coming to my mind when people ask me this, when I'm talking about this, is the Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
That's a great one too.
That's yeah, that's really, really good. I don't want to say surprised, but I was blown away by that
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've just kind of been able to see some of the classics that I never really took the time to see.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of the older ones. I'm not that big a fan of like older movies, like, before 1970 kind of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I've come to appreciate a few of them. The Wizard of Oz is up there now, which I'd seen, but when I was like a child.
Yeah.
Casablanca, uh, Citizen Kane, movies like that. I have a much greater appreciation for.
Okay.
Um, and then there are others that I'm kind of like, eh,
There'll
you know,
always be some, that's art is objective. It's
yeah,
or sorry, art is subjective. It's we try to behave like it's objective, but it's realistically it's subjective. And since movies are
right,
so accessible nowadays, we often forget. You know,
yeah,
so no, that's so some great picks there. Like three billboards, or yeah,
mhm,
just Departed, especially Departed in Boston. Whilst you're in Boston, that must
yeah,
feel
it was
too close to
fun.
home.
Well, I've seen The Departed a million times, so I was excited when that was the first movie I got to join for because I knew all this behind the scenes stuff on it, so I was able to contribute a lot
Hmm.
to that
Hmm.
conversation. I probably contributed more to that conversation than I have any other conversation since in that group, despite how much I usually talk. But
Yeah.
yeah, I there were a couple others that I would say I'm not going to put them in the favorites category because I did not enjoy them, but I
Hmm.
appreciated them.
Hmm. Like,
So, one of them was Midsummer, kind of a horror movie, and
oh yeah. Hmm.
and I remember just like while I was watching it, I was like, I don't like this. Like, I don't like how I feel while I'm watching this. I don't, and I kind of initially, this is one of my first experiences of like learning
Hmm.
a different perspective of a movie I didn't enjoy and then appreciating it afterwards, even if I didn't enjoy the experience of watching it. Like, oh, I'm glad I did.
Hmm.
Because, myself and a few members of the group at first were just like, I didn't like this and this and this and
Hmm.
that about the movie just because it was an uncomfortable watch.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of picking it apart. And then one of the guys on there came on and said, "This is an artistic masterpiece. I don't know what you guys are all saying." And he went into all the different, just the a lot of the symbolism and just a
Hmm.
lot of the art that went to it and just all these different things. And made it kind of very meaningful. And I kind of look back at this movie I just watched, hating it and thinking like, no, I still didn't like the experience of watching this. It makes, but like you're not supposed to like feel good watching this movie. And I suddenly appreciated it. I was like, oh, the music and the way they set it up, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable for that, like,
Yep.
and that just made me go, wow, okay, what, like, I don't remember the name of the guy that made the movie, but I was like, I appreciate that a whole lot more now. Not gonna watch it again
Hmm.
for a
Hmm.
while, unless I'm with somebody that really just feels like being uncomfortable for a couple of hours. But like I appreciate it a lot more. The same thing was with Foxcatcher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve Carell did a fantastic job being just a villain of a human being in that.
Hmm.
But I appreciate what that movie did. What they were trying to do and what they did as far as just making you feel uncomfortable because it's a bad situation. You're not supposed to feel good in that movie.
Hmm.
And I think Foxcatcher does that better than almost any movie that you're not technically supposed to feel good about.
Hmm.
The only one I could compare it to lately is probably Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
where it's like you
Oppenheimer.
walk out of there and you're like, oh, I feel like we're all doomed. Like, but yeah, I Foxcatcher I appreciated a lot more than I enjoyed, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I was gonna raise the same point as that friend from the group about Midsummer. By the way, it was directed by Ari Aster, who did Hereditary,
That's right.
and now
Yes.
like was it last year? Beau is Afraid. I still haven't seen that one, but I've seen both Hereditary and Midsummer. And yeah, that's kind of the point. I don't think he's supposed to enjoy it. Like yeah, like the movie starts with a you know suicide. The movie starts like
Hmm. And
very
a
dark.
very like
Hmm.
graphic one too, and
Yes, yes.
not even gory, but just like ooh, like it's
Uncomfortable.
just yeah.
And then
And I
just
and
puts you in a
I did
headspace.
and
Hmm.
one thing I really did like as far as just appreciating a way they make you uncomfortable is whenever Florence Pugh's character is screaming, like especially during that first scene when she discovers the whole thing
Yep.
and she's starting to just scream in agony, the music is basically going along with the same tone as her screams.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I noticed that thinking like, wow, that makes like it really goes into just sound and music and just how that can really affect, the way you feel, your
Hmm.
mental state, your emotions and everything. It's very powerful. But that's just another level of like, oh wow, yeah,
Yep.
it's wow. Yeah, I was pretty impressed by that.
Same. Like again, like I wouldn't say I've enjoyed it, but I really appreciated Midsommar, and because of that, or partly because of that, we now have Florence Pugh for who she is, because that was really
Hmm.
her, like that 2019, 18, 19 was her breakthrough, and now with the
Yeah.
Oppenheimer, as you mentioned, Oppenheimer, you know, and now June,
Right.
Dune 2, she is the
Yeah,
future's
she's
megastar.
I love me some Florence Pugh for sure.
Mhm.
And then obviously she had her Marvel, her Black Widow thing in Marvel. But
And I'm pretty sure she will be back. Her Yelena
oh
will
yeah,
be back. So
yeah,
that's no, that's
definitely. But yeah, it's so cool to see her in like in big projects, but also some kind of more artsy project to see her, right? She has a pretty good song too. I don't,
oh.
it's like, I want to say Tony Sebastian is the name of this. I don't remember the name of the other singer, but
Mhm.
it's a, It's like it's mid. I'll have to find it, but it's a
Hmm.
really good song. It's very chill, but it's a good song. I'm gonna look that up while we're talking. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, it's fine. I didn't know she was a singer, to be honest. Like I knew, for example, Scarlett Johansson is a singer, and she has like I want to say a tiny, like a two-person band, so or duo, I guess. And she sings, I think, quite well. She's not like the most talented singer, but she's pretty decent. She's much better than I am. So hey, there's that. And nobody
Yeah,
like didn't know about Florence Pugh. All right.
yeah. She's got a few. She's got a couple of, well, it looks like maybe a couple albums, maybe just a single somewhere here. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the one I was talking, yeah, it's Tony Sebastian, and the song's called Midnight. It's, if anybody's hearing this, give it a listen. It's pretty cool. And
I'll check it out.
it's kind of cool because she does the, if you're paying attention, she's doing the lower part of that song.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of tell, like, when you know her, like her voice, it's like, oh, okay, I like what they're doing here. But yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
very good. Anyway,
No, I will definitely check it out because, if there's any chance for me to get more Florence Pugh in my life, yes, I'll take it.
yeah, absolutely.
And with that, I think we can move to the this or that game, which is quite simple. I'll give you two options, and you tell me which one would you prefer. So, Mike,
Do I get to analyze them relentlessly like I
if
usually
you
like to?
want, no, yeah, if you like a
Okay, I
bit of
might.
justification, like why would you pick one over the other, but like, nothing too crazy. But again, we go as long as you want, all right? We have a lot of time.
Okay.
So, Mike, iOS or Android?
Android. I've always
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, my thing is I don't want to have to buy Apple products for literally everything else that I own.
Yeah.
And I'll use my phone for, like, if I connect it to my computer to upload pictures or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I like just having my own, my own laptop or my computer. I can, just a regular old USB drive works nicely. I don't want to have to deal with this, like, oh, this is my Apple account and this is locked, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's just annoying. So,
I
so
get
yeah,
you.
Android for the freedom that it provides.
Yes. And customization as well. A lot of
Yeah.
customizable things. And
Yeah.
yeah. TV shows or
Also,
movies.
like, the
Oh,
more
yeah.
the further I go along in time with that, the more entrenched in that view I get, because, like, my parents have Apple stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
so anytime they're like, "Hey, can you help me with my phone?" I'm like, "Ah, I'll try."
Yeah.
And there are just certain things that sometimes Apple will do. They'll update something or they'll create something, and it just makes it really, really complicated for somebody
Yep.
that's at the age of my parents, and it's unnecessary for them, and it pisses me off. It's like, hey, could you maybe not make it so complicated and pretend you're the tech gods of the world? Like, just give people a break that just want to use a phone,
It, it kind of
and,
defeats
like,
the point. Yeah, it kind of defeats the point of like, having like a clear, user interface and
yeah,
being like quite easy to use if they like over start to overcomplicate things.
exactly.
So
So,
no, I get
anyway,
you.
go ahead.
I get you. I get you. TV shows or movies?
I depends on the show or the movie. It really
Okay,
just I'm sorry. I don't know.
that's fine.
There are a lot of good shows. I could go on and on about shows too, but,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially the last couple of years, I have such an appreciation for movies. It really, really depends on the story you want to tell.
Yeah,
Some stories have to be TV shows. Breaking Bad could not have been a movie.
correct.
But I don't think The Dark Knight would have been a good TV. Well, it would have been good, but I don't think it would have been the same if it was a TV show. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
it just depends on the story you're looking to tell.
I like that answer. Yeah, tea or coffee?
Neither. I guess I'll kind of go tea,
Hmm.
because there's like a lemon ginger tea that I kind of like can withstand and be
Hmm.
okay with, but yeah, I don't really drink either one.
So you just water kind of guy.
Yeah, I used to kind of drink a lot of the soft drinks and all that stuff, but I'm trying to be a little more health conscious. So it's mostly water and juice. Even that, I'm kind of drinking less juice these days too, just because, the sugars, there's so much of that. And I'm
Hmm.
a sucker for sugar, so, it's bad enough as it is. But
Yeah,
yeah, like mostly water, I guess.
same.
So many, I'm definitely a night owl, but I have a job that I have to get up early in the morning all the time, so I've just kind of had to get used to that over the years.
Hmm.
And I've had so many coworkers at different places I've worked that have just been like, you know, what kind of coffee do you like? I'm like, I don't drink coffee. They're like, you don't drink coffee? I'm like, no, sorry.
I get no, again,
I
I
love the
get it.
smell of it though.
As a person who loves coffee, I get when people don't like coffee whatsoever. So
Yeah.
it's just again like an acquired taste, especially if you used to just instant coffee and it's not really the greatest coffee. Like I'm gonna be the coffee snob
Yeah.
that says it's not really the greatest coffee, what many people consider coffee. So I get it.
I mean, it fascinates me. You know, there's
Hmm.
coffee beans from all over the world and all the different kinds, but I don't really like the taste of coffee. But let's
Hmm.
say, you know, for the game, I'll say coffee just because I love the smell of it.
And that's a great smell. It is.
Hmm.
Money or free time?
Free time,
Oh, okay.
hands down.
Okay. Hands
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, I my time is more valuable than money. You know, I know
Hmm.
that we live in a world where, you know, in order to get money to buy resources, you exchange your time and your
Yeah.
hours. And so we trade our time for it, and that you do it because you have to. But I can't tell you the number of times it's like if I had the choice between a day off or going in to make, you know, it's like, hey, you want to come in and make some extra money? I'm like, no, why would I do that? Like,
Hmm.
I can just have the day to myself. I right now I'm working 4 10-hour shifts instead of 5 8-hour shifts, and I love it so much. It's the same amount of hours, but you're always going to be tired at the end of the day anyway after work, whether it's
Hmm.
8 or 10 hours, it's still a full day.
Yeah.
So, you know, that extra day off makes all the difference in the world. And so like you wake up, you're like, oh, extra day off. Nice. So free time, 100%.
As a person who used to do 4 days shifts or 4 night shifts and 4 days off after those shifts, yes, free time. Those 4 days off, I'm kind of missing now with my new role. So I hear you. Honesty or other people's feelings?
I feel like I would lean honesty,
Hmm.
but that's also a very like that's ugh. They you know, we talked just a tad like for 30 seconds or so before we started recording this, and I mentioned like, hey, the whole controversial thing
Yeah.
uh we probably won't get into, but I will say like there are so many issues that are so polarized that just have so many shades of gray to them that are like, you know,
Hmm.
it's so complex. And you know, with us when it comes to gun violence and, you know, gun control and abortion and
Hmm.
the death penalty and all these different things, it's like there are so many different variables that go into this
Yeah.
instead of just one camp or the other. Which one are you? It's like, hey, how about we like look at all of it and think about it and
Hmm.
discuss it, you know?
Hmm.
And so I think this is one of those. It's like honesty or people's feelings. I would need more background information, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I lean on honesty for
Hmm.
sure. Like if it's just generally probably I tend to be more honest. I tend to be more blunt about things. But I'm also a people pleaser, so even if I'm being honest, I'm gonna try and kind of soften the blow and say it in a way that's gonna hurt their feelings less, because I hate hurting people's feelings. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's yeah, I'll lean honesty for the sake of the game.
Nice. Nice. I
I
think I
told you
know
I'm a
the
short story long guy.
That's fine, and that's
Told you.
that's that's all great for this podcast. I think I know where you're gonna lean on this one, but I'll ask it anyway. Summer or winter?
I guess summer.
Hmm.
I don't I think every season has something to offer,
Yeah,
you know. My favorite I think is probably the fall, actually, the autumn.
I see.
So but I mean you know, my birthday's in the winter, and I kind of like I do enjoy like the, you know, I enjoy a fresh snow
Hmm.
unless I'm driving in it.
Yeah.
But you know, spring, you know, it's starting to finally warm up, and just that like that relief that you get, and just things blooming and all that, just that
Hmm.
anticipation towards like, all right, here we go, like we're actually getting going with this year. Summer, you know, summer it's warm out, you do stuff outside, and it's beautiful, blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
But autumn, I think it's just, you know, I like the weather just as far as being a little cooler, sweatshirt weather. Sometimes it depends on the day.
Hmm.
Uh, but just the changing of the leaves and everything, to me, there's just nothing like it,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's also like cozy, it feels cozy.
Yeah. I like to point out that out of all the this, like, I like the this or that game, but I'm
Mhm.
very bad at it because out of every choice you've given me so far, I've given you a clear answer on one of them.
That's perfectly fine. Look, this is
That's
all perfectly fine. It's all us, having
and
a
I'm not surprised
conversation.
by that at all. That's
No,
just how I
you're not
am.
bad.
So
That's again, you're not bad. No, this is
I
perfectly
didn't I didn't
gets us
say it was
going.
bad.
Gets us going.
I didn't say it was bad. I'm just saying that's just, it's what you're in for here.
And again, that's what I sign up for. So yes, I'll be there. Probably the most important one of all. Ninjas or pirates?
I mean, they're both pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we're looking at just those two entities as they are, we'll say ninjas
Mm-hmm.
because I get seasickness now on boats apparently.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's kind of an assassin versus a thief, and I feel like a an assassin's cooler.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like other things that are themed, like like if there's a I don't know, if you're to dress somebody else, like if say like the president of the United States came out in a Halloween costume, I'd rather see him dressed up as a pirate than a ninja or
Yeah.
something like that. Like you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like I like the pirate theme a little more,
Okay.
but as far as those two entities, I'm gonna say ninja.
Fair. Fair. And the last question, free will or destiny?
Well, of course. Yeah, I mean, free will.
Mm-hmm.
I uh I feel like there's probably certain people are built for certain things, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
always make it to where you're necessarily supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
a hard time believing that everything's already decided kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say free will, just especially because I think freedom is kind of being threatened, around the world over the last decade or so, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not the same thing, but it's the same feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I again, I think there's a purpose, but you also have the option of fulfilling or not fulfilling that purpose, or what you're built for, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's just the same thing as like, okay, there's a plan, but then there's what actually goes down, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's this is a terrible example, but like if you plan to rob a bank, there's the plan and then there's how it actually goes.
Yeah.
There are going to be things you don't account for. There you can make mistakes. You can just make a different decision at the end of it. It's like it's may or may not go the way that you have it set.
So what he's saying is a bit of both.
Yeah, I mean not to keep going with a theme of every answer I've given you.
That's fine.
But yeah, again, I think there's a framework, but ultimately I think free will wins out.
Agreed. All right. And since you don't
Also,
wanna,
because
Mhm.
yeah,
No, it's
sorry,
all.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, since you don't really want to do any controversial takes or anything like that, we can just go past it and skip right to the Flix part of this podcast if you want.
Yeah, he'll get controversial on the movies part for sure. I don't
Nice,
mind doing that at all. But
nice. All right.
yeah, I just being in the States, it's kind of everything's so polarized, and it's kind of hard to just have your own opinion without somebody just being really mad at you for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or just saying, like, and like on one side, everybody's going to get mad at you, or if you say something, everybody on the other side's going to get mad at you. And, sometimes it's like, hey guys, I'm on your team about this. Like, why are you get, it's just, I feel, honestly, I feel like it's more and more dangerous here today to just say what you're thinking about certain subjects. And
Mm-hmm.
that's unfortunate because I really like discussing these things.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like discussing in general, as you can tell, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's like, I remember several years ago I was at a restaurant and I saw this table of like six or seven older men and
Mm-hmm.
they were all discussing politics and they were on pretty vastly different sides of a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a I'm not even going to say heated, but they had a spirited discussion, but it was all respectful and you could tell they all respected and cared about each other and they respected each other's opinions and they would actually listen. It wasn't like, no, you're wrong and I'm right. And this is what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
It was an actual discussion. And I miss that
Yeah.
because the only people I can have actual discussions with are, maybe people that see things in a similar way,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not the same, but a similar way. I guess, I mean, that's not entirely true, but you really kind of have to reach out there and be like, hey, are you cool having a discussion about this? There are only a few people that, like, if I disagree with them on something, I know, okay, yeah, we can just talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
But, I couldn't just go to a stranger and be like, hey, this is how I feel about this, completely different than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Because they, a lot of times will get really heated about it.
No, and
Sometimes, I
again,
mean, I wear my heart in my mind. I wear my heart on my sleeve and my mind on the other.
mhm.
So like sometimes it happens anyways, but yeah, I don't necessarily want to make it a matter of public record for
That's and
any
again,
hot
that's
button
perfectly
issues.
fine. That's perfectly fine. Like, this, like I always said to every guest, like this, I kind of created this as a kind of safe space, quote unquote, so we can discuss any topic, the guest is willing to discuss. But if
Mhm.
the guest is not willing, I'm not gonna push you or anybody to some place where you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
So, and it's more than fine. So with that, we can move to the Flix part of this podcast, and I'll ask. Mike, what is the last new movie you would rate 5 out of 5? And for the purposes of this podcast, anything 2020s onward.
So I wrote down a couple that I don't
Mhm.
think are in that range.
Okay.
I told you about Three Billboards. I really, really like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think just as far as how good the movie was, I'll give you two. And they're both Oscar nominees this year. Oppenheimer
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was very, very good, uncomfortable but good, and long. And Killers of the Flower Moon was also very, very long but very good.
And also
I
uncomfortable.
was very impressed by, yeah, I was very impressed by both of those.
No, like both
So as
both
far as
great movies, both long movies, but in
yeah,
one case I didn't really feel that length that much, which is for me it was Oppenheimer. I didn't really feel those 3 hours as much. I definitely felt it a bit more with Killers of the Flower Moon. However, I still enjoyed it and I need to rewatch it to kind of get my mind straight on this movie because I really
I
liked it.
I'm gonna say yeah. I kind of
Hmm.
as far as feeling the length of the movie, I'm not saying this in a bad way where it's like, oh my God, this is so long, but just where I noticed like, oh, this is a really long movie. I actually noticed that more with Oppenheimer.
Okay.
I didn't mind it because I mean, it was such a good movie, but there were a couple times where I was like, oh, okay, it looks like they're about to wrap this up. And then there's another, oh, they're starting a whole nother thing here. Okay, this is a pretty long movie.
Hmm.
I didn't mind it, but it was just, oh, okay. Killers of the Flower Moon was all kind of that one, solid story. And yeah, it's a long one,
Hmm.
but the entire time, and afterwards, I went and saw it with my parents in the theater, which is pretty special because I haven't been able to do that for a while.
Hmm.
And we were driving back, discussing the movie. It was just that good. We were actually just talking about the movie. And I remember telling them, like, I keep trying to think, like, what could they have cut? And I don't think they could. I think it had to be as it was. I don't really think there's much they could have cut to make it this, a better movie. Like if you look at did you watch Zack Snyder's Justice the Snyder cut
Yes.
of the Justice
Yes.
League?
Unfortunately, yes.
So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I
Hmm.
and I do think it's better than the thing that they put together when they had all that mess with Joss Whedon and all that.
Yeah.
But I remember like looking at that and thinking they could have cut this, they could have cut this, they could have cut that. There's a scene towards the beginning in the Amazonia, whatever Wonder Woman's
Hmm.
world is, that took like a half hour, and I'm like, they could have made this 5 minutes
Yeah.
you know, or Aquaman is walking into the water and, the Nordic ladies are singing that foreign language in a cappella,
Hmm.
that song. And it's like, that could have been a 10-second scene, but no, we're going to give you the whole song, and so like 3 minutes later, you're like, what is why are we still doing this? What's happening here?
Hmm.
Killers of the Flower Moon was not that way at all. There wasn't, I looking at it, it didn't feel like there was anything that was like, this is unnecessary. They didn't need to do this. It all was relevant to the story. And not to give, I'm gonna say this in a way that doesn't really spoil anything, but I remember being in the middle of it
Hmm.
and just being blown away, like, oh my God, are they just gonna like get away with it? Like just, and
Hmm.
that's still kind of early on in the movie, but you'd gone through enough where you're like, oh, like you just feel this sense of dread.
Hmm.
Um, and you realize like, oh, there's a whole lot more to go. I wonder how like I wonder how bad this is about to be, not quality wise, but just like,
Yeah.
how much evil are we about to see on the screen, or how much, how uncomfortable is this about to get? I felt the same with Society in the Snow. Um,
I still haven't seen that one, but I know what is it about. I've seen the Alive movie from like
yeah.
93, I want to say. But yeah, I have not. I need
Um,
to see that before the Oscars. Yeah.
yeah, I was a movie group pick, and
Hmm.
so first of all, the whole cannibalism thing, they did very tastefully. It's not about that, it's just part of what happened, and they do like go over like the moral and spiritual debates that people are having within themselves and with each other and everything. And
Hmm.
so like they did that in a very realistic and tasteful way.
Hmm.
It's like I think it's an over 2 hour movie, but I just remember there's one point where, I didn't, I knew it was a true story, but I couldn't remember, like, I didn't know if anybody had made it out or
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
So I was like on the hook, like, all right, let's see what happens here. And there was a point where I was like, oh, everybody is for sure about to die within the next like 5 to 10 minutes of this movie. There's no way,
Hmm.
like this is the end of the movie. And then I like had to pause it. I'm like, there's still an hour left. How, like, there's no way, like they're all gonna die. How do they have another hour out of this? And they do, and it's great. But it was a similar thing in Killers of the Flower Moon, where it's just like we're halfway through. I'm like, I mean, it was a little different, but it was like, how are they gonna? I don't see how they can get out of this. I don't like. Is this
Yeah.
just gonna be like evil wins the day, and we're just watching that for the rest of the time? Oh my God, and
Hmm.
you get that kind of sick feeling. God, it was really, really well done.
No, it was. It was. And again, I'm not
Yeah.
arguing to cut down Killers of No, just I
No,
wanted to rewatch
let's
it.
have the discussion. I love it.
No, yeah, exactly. But I need to rewatch it for myself just to kind of get my, head straight about like how I actually feel. I know I really like it. I'm just not in like the
Hmm.
like love that movie yet, and I would love to. So I feel like it's just me problem. So I would love to rewatch it at home where I can actually pause the movie. And, if I need like a water or a toilet break for a minute, and then go back to it
Hmm.
rather than just in a cinema where I think what I that's the point I made before. I don't mind longer movies. Most of them, they if they have a purpose, but give us intermissions. If you have like
Yeah.
or a Killers of the Flower Moon is like 3.5 hours. If you have that kind of movie, give us like someplace sensible, someplace around halfway through. Give us an intermission for like 5-10 minutes. People can, go to the toilet. People can refill their snacks, their cokes, whatever. Go back, and
I
everybody's happy.
I'm gonna push back on that a little just for the sake of the discussion.
Okay.
The only issue there is that when you have an intermission, you have an entire theater full of people that are all going to be going to the bathroom and the
Hmm.
snacks at the same time.
Hmm.
So you're not going to be able to get back in time if you have the 5 or 10 minutes. That intermission is going to have to be a lot longer, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'm at the point where if I need to go to the bathroom in the middle of a movie, I kind of just wait until there's like I just kind of say like, all right, looks like there's a down thing. I'm gonna go.
Hmm.
Um, because if it's a movie that I really want to see, I know that I'm gonna watch it again. Like if
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this again sometime in streaming, and I'll pick up like the minute that I missed or something like that.
Hmm.
Unless it's a movie where you have to pay attention to every single thing that happens, that's different.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I was just in the theater for Dune, and I missed the beginning of it because my friend, I got there late to meet my friend at the theater, and then like I ran out to go to the bathroom and get popcorn, so I missed a big part of it there. But I was like, it's fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't mind it as much when you're in the theater. I definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have that time. I think it would just have to be strategic in order for it to work. Because I
Well, it.
think if you just had it as is, like, I'm thinking about like the giant theater that I saw Dune in.
Hmm.
If that entire theater tried to go to the bathroom in 10 minutes,
Hmm.
nobody would have made it.
No, of course,
But
but
you're
it used to
honestly,
be. It
you're
used to be a
probably just
standard.
right.
No, it used
Oh
to be
yeah.
standard because used to, movies from like 50s, 60s, there was a point where all the Hollywood epics were at least 3-4 hours. So there was an actual
All right.
intermission built into the movie. And I think was like 15-minute break, 15-20 minutes, because they calculated
Yeah,
or
okay.
they like accounted with the amount of people. And I
That's
remember even
reasonable. Yeah.
seeing, and I remember even seeing like Hateful Eight, Tarantino's movie in 2015. There was with a intermission built into the movie by Tarantino, and I actually had the chance to see it as he intended here. And there was an intermission, halfway through the movie, felt natural, felt nice. So quick visit to the toilet, come back to my seat, didn't miss anything. I was like, yes. So again,
Well,
like,
on your point,
mhm,
I mean, if you go to a play, there's an intermission.
yeah,
So,
yeah, like theater,
and
yeah,
there's
exactly, like
halftime at
ballet,
sports. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no, I think maybe you're right. I think maybe you
like
win that round. That's
it's not about winning. No, it's not about winning. It's more about like
no, I know. It's
I know. Like we don't need intermission for every movie. Don't get no no no. Like if it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, okay, let's no. But if the movie is like pushing it, the three and a half, like Colors of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer,
yeah.
I know many people that walked out halfway through because they just had the cola, they just had the Pepsi or whatever, and they couldn't hold it much longer.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh fuck, I have like we have 2 hours left. Okay, I need to go. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's no, it's a good discussion. So, what would you say is the last teen movie you rated 5 out of 5? Anything between 2003 to 2019 for the purposes of this
I
podcast.
don't I mean,
We can go with
I
the
don't know,
three
man.
billboards. Three billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. That falls in that category. Or they mentioned.
That falls in a teen movie because I think teen movie, I think of like
No, those are just
basically like goofy comedies kind
no
of
no
thing,
no.
like
Those are just category names for the for the period of like 2003, 2019. Those are just
oh, the
something to
2010 to 2020
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Those
I
are just
see. My apologies.
it's fine, it's fine.
I read when I you sent me that little outline, I was reading the different ones and I saw teen and adult and I was like, well, teen, all right, well.
Hmm, I know.
Three Billboards is good. Honestly, a lot of my favorite movies I've seen have been kind of in that time period over the last, we'll say probably like 15 years or so. But
Hmm.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was good. I mean, that's also, the time period you're talking about is
Yep.
the, that's the peak of Marvel.
Hmm.
I mean, Iron Man was what, 2008, I think.
Yes.
And so that it was just getting started then. So by the time you got the Avengers, the first Avengers all the way through Endgame is right. I mean, that's the decade of the Avengers, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and the whole Marvel saga, the Infinity Saga, has to be up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, it's changed a lot since then, and it's, people are a lot more mixed, and I think people are probably a little burnt out.
Hmm.
And especially because now Sony's coming in and thinking, like, we can take the most obscure Spider-Man characters and make a movie out of it, and they're wrong. But yeah, during that time period, I don't know how you can't start with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I guess.
No, that's a good choice. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a good handful of movies right there. I did enjoy Force Awakens and
Hmm.
the some of the Star Wars
Hmm.
sequels.
Hmm.
I know some of them are a little bit contentious, but I personally, I think a lot of the reason that people disliked either episode 8 or episode 9, or I guess episode 7 for that matter, were kind of more like just nerdy fan things like, no, that's not how this is supposed to go.
Hmm.
And I respect that. But just objectively as a movie, I enjoyed, all of them. It
Okay.
wasn't like we were talking about earlier with Jurassic Park Dominion, where you're just sitting there like, this is a bad movie.
Hmm.
I didn't get that feeling with any of the Star Wars sequels.
Hmm.
So I enjoyed those too. I'm actually just looking over at my I have a little shelf with a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays on them, which, I haven't used in a long time. But, anything that I really, really feel pretty strongly about, I used to just be like, all right, this one I'm getting. So
Yes. Yeah.
can't really necessarily see. But yeah, I think that's probably the big one.
Okay. So, what would you say is the last adult quote unquote movie, you would rate 5 out of 5? So, anything in between 2002 and 1975.
When I saw adult on this, I was like, are we really going to talk about like our favorite porn movie here?
No, no,
What's
no.
like that's
Again, just a
I
category, just a category
because I
description,
don't
really.
okay, good because I was like, I don't know how to contribute to that one. I'm not
It's fun.
let's see. So 22 2000, 2010 kind of thing, we're saying?
2002 to 1975. So anything from there.
Oh,
It's
okay.
quite broad. It's quite broad. So, you can go as back as you want until 75, really.
Dark Knight. I mean, I know that's pretty close to the decade or the period we were just talking about, because that's 2008, I
Eight.
want to
Yeah.
say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Dark Knight,
Okay.
it's got to be there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I guess The Departed would be up there too. I don't know if that's. I feel like that was around. I had posters of both of those in my college dorm room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess those would be the two that pop off the top of my head, and I know they're a little more recent, but it just sometimes it's hard for me to think of like, oh, this movie was made, I during this time period or
No, I understand. Like, not everybody, like, I
um
have a pretty good memory for movies and dates, and I understand not everybody, people usually remember much more important things, not things like that. And my memory works in different ways. I usually remember the years and not much more.
hmm. What was Ocean's 11 I really enjoyed.
That's 2001. That would actually, yeah,
Yeah.
that would actually qualify in for that category. Yeah. No, that's.
I'm yeah, really really big. I could watch that one over and over. I enjoy that one a lot.
Hmm.
Um and then what was the is the Insiders the one where
Yep. Russell Crowe.
with the twist at the end that I'm thinking of?
I don't know if you're thinking the
Maybe.
twist. Insider. Insider is with
I can't
Russell
remember the name
Crowe.
of the
Insider is the Russell Crowe
yeah.
movie that where he basically, isn't it about tobacco industry and how he, like, how he puts
Oh
them on
yeah.
blast?
No,
Oh,
that's not what I
or
was thinking of.
do you mean the Inside Man with from Spike Lee?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
that's 2006, if I'm not mistaken. That's a great movie, by the way. That's
Um
a good
the
shout.
one with the one where that like slow drop of the coffee cup
Oh,
exploding
that's
on the
Usual
floor.
Suspects. Usual Suspects.
Yes, thank you.
That's
Thank you.
that is 95, so that's actually, yeah, that's also qualifies for
Yeah.
that. That's a
That's I was
all
gonna say I
time.
thought that was 95.
That's, might
Yeah.
be a
And
bit problematic nowadays with, everybody who is involved with that movie. Like, but I'm
right.
I'm in the camp of separating art from the artists. So no, that's a classic
I
by
yeah,
all,
if
means.
if you want to get controversial, I think that's probably where I could stand as I try. There are a couple of people that I can't do it anymore. Like Cosby is a big one. Bill Cosby is
Yeah.
just is so just egregious and just repeated.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just like, oh my God, can't do it. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
As a professional wrestling fan, I have a hard time watching a Chris Benoit match anymore because he is a murder suicide with his family.
Ooh.
Yeah,
As somebody
but
who doesn't
like,
follow up wrestling, I that name means nothing to me. So
well, it's that's a good thing. And that, there were a lot of studies after that too, as far as like CTE, and that was kind of, a big part of that movement because it's obviously a tragedy.
hmm.
Yeah, there are some that are still pretty uncomfortable, but some I kind of feel like I can't help it. Like I just the art behind this is just, Louis C.K. is another one. Like
Hmm.
I don't think I would buy a ticket to see Louis C.K. at this point.
Hmm.
But, I part of my becoming an adult, as far as comedy goes, was, there are several comedians that I really enjoyed, and he was right up there at the top. And so
Yeah.
there are a lot, there's some jokes now that I'm like, ugh,
Yeah.
I don't know, that one's a little more uncomfortable. But there are so many other ones that I still think of regularly where I'm like, oh yeah, there's that one joke about who made Louis C.K. So that's one where I kind of try to separate the art from the artist,
Yeah.
for sure. And speaking of comedians, Aziz Ansari has a really good bit about that,
Hmm.
where he's talking about like, he kind of talks about R. Kelly for a few minutes, and everybody's kind of like, yeah, everybody's kind of not really listening to R. Kelly's music anymore, and they're like, like kind of,
Hmm.
and then he says, "What about Michael Jackson?" Everybody like Michael Jackson, the whole crowd cheers and like, or he no, it's the opposite. He asks like, "Hey, so clap if you're done listening to Michael Jackson." And there's just like a small spattering of claps, and
Hmm.
he's like, "What happened to all those R. Kelly claps?" And he just goes, sorry, Aziz, the music's too good. I've got a wedding this summer." Like, just
Yeah.
it, the when the music's as good as it is, like you said, the art and the artist, it's like, eh. And on that note, I feel like when you look at like classic art, if you're looking at art from a century ago,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was like Hitler,
Yep.
that's different. But
Yes.
if it's like an actual artist, it's like, oh, what, I mean, there are so many movies about, artists or composers and all like, their troubled lives. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that about that. And I feel like in another century from now, a lot of the things that we're kind of uncomfortable with will kind of be looked at more objectively and like, wow, look at like the trouble. Yeah, I mean, assuming we're all around by then.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah, so I think there's something to be said about separating the art from the artist, but especially when you're there at the time, it's kind of like, I don't know, where do you draw the line? You know what
Well,
I
as
mean?
you said,
It's like,
as you said before, like, that's where you have the adult conversations. Like, we can be adult and say, yeah, for example, Usual Suspects, right? Yes. Do I
mhm,
like Kevin Spacey as much as I used to 10 years ago? No, I don't, because many, many things have come out about him where there is probably some smoke, the saying, there's no smoke without fire. There's probably some fire there
mhm.
because especially all four men who accused him magically died in accidents. And I'm like, all right, cool. So that's happened. So,
Yeah,
like,
when you realize that in House of Cards, he was essentially like,
yep,
at least as
exactly.
far as rumor has it, was playing himself only as president. It's like,
Hmm.
that's kind of like with like some of Louis C.K.'s material. Some of it's great, but then there are other jokes he has where like if he's talking about, masturbating a lot a lot, it's just like,
Yes.
we're gonna fast forward through this part. This part's a little weird now.
And it's the thing, it's, and
Um,
that's, us having the adult conversation where, like, yes, we can all acknowledge that Kevin Spacey or Bryan Singer, the director, they've done questionable things and they shouldn't be celebrated as much, but it doesn't deny that once upon a time, they had talent. Both of them were talented dudes. Unfortunately, very flawed talented dudes. So, and this is the thing. I'm not saying, or I don't think any of us are saying, well, the talent should outweigh what they done. No, no, it's not that. It's more about I can still enjoy the Usual Suspects for what it is. And, yes, will I feel a bit weird every time I see Kevin Spacey being Kevin Spacey? Yes. But also, does it make the movie any less enjoyable for me? Not for me personally, no. I understand some people they cannot watch it. They cannot watch any Kevin Spacey movie, for example. All right, yeah, that's the thing.
I just feel like if you disqualify every single thing that every single person has done, you're not going to be able to enjoy anything.
Well,
You kind of
we
just, there are things you got to just be like, look, like you said, have the adult conversation. Like,
mhm,
this is wrong.
mhm.
Separate it from this, please.
Like
It's
we don't
just,
even have to go anywhere further than Harvey Weinstein, right? If
you
you
know,
because obviously there's he's been proven by a lot of there's been trial and there were like all close to 100 accusations stepped 100 women stepped
God,
forward.
yeah.
So there is something. There must be like no, there is definitely something. And he was one of the most powerful men. Well, because again, he's been
They found him guilty, didn't they? I
yeah,
thought, I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know. Maybe
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
assuming.
No,
Yeah.
and here's the thing: since he was the most powerful producer for close to 2 decades, you know, if you were to disqualify everything he's done or everything he's touched, his production company, like you would disqualify many great movies that unfortunately were produced by his company. That doesn't mean he had any, input on the creative side. No, that just usually means he, financed the movie. But
It
that
was his
means most
money.
of the
Yeah.
90s, most of the 2000s, like some Oscar
Hmm.
winning movies. Like, are we gonna check them in a bin and say, yeah, we shouldn't watch them because of Harvey Weinstein? I'm not in that camp because I don't think that makes sense. I think again, that's where
Right.
we had the conversation where we say, yes, unfortunately, this has been produced by a monster, and we all need to
Yeah.
live with that. And if some people
I
prefer not to watch it because of it, all right.
Yeah, I think like there's something to be said about like boycotting a certain thing, but I think it has to
Mhm.
be active. Like if there was a Harvey Weinstein movie that was in theaters right now,
Yep,
yeah, I'm not buying a ticket to that. Are you kidding me?
exactly.
But if we're talking about a movie that from the 90s or like, perfect Usual Suspects is perfect. It's like
Yeah.
this is from the 90s.
Hmm. Hmm.
This isn't in theaters right now. This is, I just feel I think I think if you can't separate some of those things, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. I'm not saying that it's see, I'm trying to kind of it's a fine line you walk because people will get angry and say, "Oh, then you're saying that this is okay." No, of course not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think there is something to be said about the art and the artist. And if the artist is still producing art and like, oh, you're doing this stuff, then yeah, then you don't support them. But that's
Mm-hmm.
I think different at the time because it doesn't matter if I go on Netflix and watch or whatever thing and watch, say, The Usual Suspects, for example,
Mm-hmm.
um because Netflix is getting all that money and I'm paying
Yeah.
Netflix for a subscription that they already like that money's already gone. If Kevin Spacey's getting any money from that, he's already gotten it because of however those rights go with that movie and however he gets royalties from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change it that way. Maybe I don't buy the DVD or something because then maybe, oh, well, then my money's going there. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah. Yeah. No,
maybe you have to
again,
be a little more creative about it, but yeah. I
exactly. I hear you. Like again,
but
and it's not
I
controversial
also
here.
understand people's points. I really do. I understand when people are like, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you can't, I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
it's fine. And again, it's not controversial here because I'm quite vocal about this because, you know, throughout the history, literally ever since the cinema began, like, in the late 1900s, like there have been people involved where, yeah, they were not great people, but they given us this. And I'm pretty sure even like certain sculptures, even if we go back to 15th, 16th century, some of the painters, we don't know much about them, and probably for the better. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like we have this almost false idea that, I don't know, I'll just say Da Vinci. Oh, he was a great mind. He must have been a good guy. We don't know. Like, we know some about his life, but if he was on social media and if he lived in this day and age where everything is scrutinized 10 times over, yeah, like
Yeah.
like it's hard to say. It's very hard to say, and it's again, it's all up to you. And I don't think it should be controversial, like controversial to say we can separate art from the artist. But and at the end of the day, it should be up to you whether you still want to watch those movies, listen to those like songs. For example, you mentioned R. Kelly. You know, it's up to you if you want to listen to it.
Oh
I
no,
would say,
that was all about Michael I was bringing up a point
or
about
Michael
Michael
Jackson.
Jackson and the Michael
Yeah,
Jackson music. Ah,
yeah,
screw R. Kelly.
yeah. So it's the same thing. It's just, yeah, and again, Michael Jackson Thriller, every Halloween, it climbs to the top of the charts.
Mm.
So many
I
people are more comfortable
there
making that distinction for him, for
yeah.
certain kind of artists.
One contract I worked at, it was actually I went back to Boston, last summer and
Mhm.
they would listen to the radio in like our little control room and on that radio station they played like the same like they really needed to add some songs to the rotation because it was like the same stuff every day. But
Yeah,
always there were at least like three Michael Jackson songs throughout the day they
yeah.
play. It's just like it's just there.
And again, because people love him, because people enjoy them, and some might not be comfortable with who he was or what he did,
Mm,
but they can, you know, compartmentalize the, you know, art and the artist.
yeah.
It is what it is. So, what would you say is the last old movie you would rate 5 out of 5? And again, that's anything 1974 and older. So anything.
You have to kind of do those on a different scale because I don't
I know.
there are a lot of movies that are classics that are
Okay.
like from back then where I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot more. Having been in the movie group, I've seen more of those now because they were
Yeah.
just never really my thing. But, there are a lot of them that I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot more than I was expecting.
Hmm.
But it's really hard to compare them to movies, like today or
Yeah.
movies that are more, it's a different time. So it's really hard to rate some of those as like, yeah, eh, we watched Citizen Kane a few months ago.
Okay.
And that's praised as, that's at the top of a lot of people's list as like
Hmm.
greatest movie of all time kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I appreciate like I saw it and I was like, okay, yeah, this was pretty good. And there are a lot of themes in there. There's a lot of cultural influence here. And like it's great for that reason.
Hmm.
As a movie itself, is it the greatest? Maybe at the time it was. I could see why at the time it could have been called that and for like a while after, but like today, would I say that it's the greatest? Heck, no.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. But I also think that that greatness is increased because of the classic nature to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And because you've
I
seen the
mean, like,
techniques the movie invented or Orson Welles invented in in countless movies after,
hmm,
without you even knowing, hey, this came from, Orson Welles did it first in Citizen Kane. Like there are several different
hmm.
shots he not invented, but basically pioneered where nobody has done them before, and now we kind of see them. Yeah, that's normal.
It's
What are you talking about?
being a trailblazer absolutely sets you in history, and that is meaningful. And it did,
Hmm.
like, again, it was a good movie.
Hmm.
But, I there's a difference between being the first, one of the first to do something and the best at it. I mean,
Yeah.
you could say this is kind of a controversial one for me. It's not really controversial, but it's kind of a sports wise.
Hmm.
I still believe that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that would argue LeBron James, and I will spend all day disproving that point to
Hmm.
people. However, I do understand in my mind that just because Jordan's the greatest then, and I still think now, doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna be the greatest forever. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
as time goes on, you develop more techniques. There's more. Jordan was really ahead of the game,
Hmm.
honestly, as far as getting his body right,
Hmm.
his competitive spirit and everything. I mean, his taste for competition was second to none, which I think is what made him what he was. But he also, he put in the work, and he had all the right, like, the working out and everything, getting his body right. That's kind of like commonplace now. You go anywhere, any top prospect, coming out, every, big school that has a, prospect coming out, they have their weight room, they have their trainers, they have their techniques. There's so much more information available now to
Yeah.
perfect those same things that he was doing. So, like, at some point, there's going to be somebody, that's going to come along and there's going to be a point where there are going to be several people that are probably as good as he was.
Hmm.
Someday, maybe. Maybe Jordan's a bad example because he's just the greatest of all time. I don't know. I
Hmm.
But you know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
I guess maybe a better example for me to not be so biased about it would be like a Babe Ruth.
Hmm.
Babe Ruth was the greatest at that time, and he's got the numbers to put him in one of the greats. But, like, look at Shohei Ohtani, the
Hmm.
baseball player now. He just signed with the Dodgers. Like, he can do everything that Babe Ruth could do,
Hmm.
only for longer and better. And it's
Hmm.
just kind of like, nowadays it's different because the techniques so. Anyways, that's sorry. I'm to
That's
bring that
fine.
back around.
Hmm.
I'll give you my favorites. I don't know if I'd give any of them necessarily 5 stars,
Hmm.
but some of my favorites have been that Casablanca, Wizard of Oz, definitely,
Hmm.
and then yeah, we'll stick with those three.
Those are great movies, especially Casablanca. I think holds up beautifully. Like Casablanca is that to me is a as close to a masterpiece as it gets, really. Like
Yeah,
especially
we'll say
during that
Casablanca
time,
then, because yeah, I agree with you.
especially during the
There are
time.
some times where it's like it's showing its age, but yeah,
Hmm.
no, it is very
Hmm.
good.
No, it's some great movies there. Like so, I'll ask you this next question, but I think I know where you're gonna go. What's your favorite movie decade?
It's either going to be the 2000s to 2010s, or like
Hmm.
late 90s to 2010s. Uh,
Hmm.
just because I think that's, being a young man growing up and, seeing more and more at that time, there were a lot more movies that made impressions on me.
Yeah.
Uh, or probably, I mean, that last decade, the 2010s, if you will,
Hmm.
it's yeah, yeah, that'll be my answer. 2000 and on, maybe include some of the 90s. It's hard not to include some of the 90s. I mean, you got Jurassic Park and Jaws, and so so many great ones then too. But
Hmm. Not quite sure
I
if we got in Jaws in the 90s, but
Oh yeah, Jaws might be 80s. That's true.
yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a certain point where, just generally as far as movies go, there's
Hmm.
somewhere in the 80s, and it's a little fluid, but like just kind of somewhere in the mid 80s
Hmm.
where movies kind of start changing, and you're kind of like, yeah, like you go back a little too far and you're like, at least
Hmm.
that's how it is for me. Sometimes at that point is kind of in the 80s, and then there are other times when that point just feels like it's maybe early 90s.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, it's kind of a fluid line, but you can tell there's that transition in how movies were made, how stories were told, and there is kind of that change. So
Yeah. No, that
yeah,
90s is a great pick. Like 90s, I've often said here on this podcast that like in 10, 15 years time where there's gonna be newer directors coming to Hollywood, there will be influenced by 90s because that's where
yeah,
people like ourselves, I think we are close to, similar age. That's where we grew up in 90s. So we grew up watching many 90s movies and there are some great movies. There are some great years like 1994 or 1999. There are some excellent years where if you look at
I
top 10 of those years, like, they're like banger next to banger next to banger, like just, great fucking movies, just period.
for
So
like Forrest Gump, throw Forrest Gump in there, like
exactly,
that's
94, yeah.
you know,
Shawshank Redemption, Pulp
yeah,
Fiction, all 94
yeah,
movies. All,
yeah,
even like 94 where is the year where we got on Jim Carrey, that where he had his amazing
yeah,
run of The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber. Like,
hmm,
all three classics. Just
yeah, absolutely.
most comedians would kill to have one of those, and he had three in the same year. That's just
Mhm.
insane. So
Adam
90s.
Sandler too, kind of in the late 90s. He had his run. I mean,
Hmm.
Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, and you get a little later with like
Hmm.
Big Daddy and all that stuff. Like, um,
Hmm.
and then, but I think that, and then 2010s are some of my favorite movies. I mean,
Hmm.
you have the comedian thing. Will Ferrell really became big, kind of in that
Yeah.
same way
Hmm.
with some early 2000s movies. But yeah, there are just so many like in that time period where like yeah, it's just that was kind of an impressionable time for me where I started watching more movies that
Yeah.
maybe were a little more adult and had different themes. And as I started to understand the world a little more,
Hmm.
those are the movies that were out. Those are the movies that were available to me.
Hmm.
So I think quality wise, 90s, and then just personally, probably the 20 to 2010 decade, we'll say that.
Nice choice. Nice choice. So, do you have any other hot movie takes besides, separating art from the artist we've already gone through?
Yeah, and it actually has a little bit to do with that topic a little bit.
Okay.
Um, just because of the direct, I actually I don't remember what Bryan Singer did. I know he did something, but I don't remember what it was.
Hmm.
Here's my hot take. I can't wait to hear what Hilty has to say about this. X-Men 3, The Last Stand is not that bad of a movie.
Okay. Okay. I've only seen it once, and it's been a long time ago, and I remember thinking it's not that bad, but I was probably 15, 16, so I would have to rewatch it to have like a
People
proper opinion.
people hate that movie for whatever
Yeah.
reason. They just
Yes,
talk
they
about how
do.
bad it is and they talk about like, oh, thank goodness, like some of the other like Days of Future Past went back and changed, reset and
Hmm.
fixed everything they did.
Hmm.
So I get that from like the comics perspective and some of the characters. Like if they were going to keep going with that story, then obviously they messed up a lot of stuff. But when the way it was at the time with the characters they had,
Hmm.
um, didn't think it was that bad. They had a lot of really good emotional moments. They had a lot of really good cinematic moments. There are some that are a little goofy where you're like, "Jeez," but that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just there was a line, the line where I get chills every time when Pyro's following Magneto through the forest and their little group there,
Hmm.
and Pyro's talking about like, hey, like why are you so focused on them? Like I've been your most loyal person. I would have even killed Professor X if you'd asked me to.
Hmm.
And then Magneto turns towards him and just stares at him for a little bit. And by the way, Ian McClellan is Magneto, chef's kiss.
Yes.
But he just turns around, stares at him for a second, and he just goes, Charles Xavier has done more for mutant kind than you'll ever know. My only regret is that he didn't live to be able to see his vision. Like
Hmm.
it's like he had to die in order for his vision to live. And like I don't remember exactly how the line goes, but every time like I see that, I'm just like, ooh, that's just because that relationship, but in the comics or in any of the movies,
Hmm.
I think that relationship between Professor Xavier and Magneto, being on opposite sides of an issue, but still being friends is so refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know it's kind of an older thing, but you could so many superhero things, hero versus villain, and like Magneto's the villain, but he also has some points. He's a
Hmm.
little extreme about, he does some of them the wrong way, some of them he's a little too extreme about, et cetera, et cetera. But like there are some things you can kind of relate. You're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's just two side, kind of two sides of the same coin. And I just love the fact that, you're in this, I mean, for lack of a better term, war,
Hmm.
and right across is your brother who you respect and love. And, whenever they have like them playing chess or whatever in jail and everything, it's like, well, I'm going to do what I have to do for my cause, but deep down, I respect you kind of thing. And that they do that obviously really well in the comics because that's where it originates. But I don't think that they really portray that relationship better than in those first three X-Men movies, and
Hmm.
especially in The Last Stand, because it's
Okay.
like they're like, yeah, that's my big one that I think would probably upset some people.
Like again, like as I said before, I cannot really push, or add anything to it because I've seen a movie long, long, long time ago. I'm definitely due for a rewatch, and I've seen it in a age where I loved most of the movies I've seen because I was 15,
Mhm.
16. So it wasn't that hard to impress me. Now, like I would be more than happy to go to back to the original trilogy, rewatching all three of them and seeing how they play today. Because I
Mhm.
remember liking the first two, and I remember thinking, like you, it was a drop of quality slightly, but it wasn't as bad as everybody said at the time. So
Mhm.
I wonder if I would still feel the same, or whether I would be like, yeah, this is bad. So
Yeah,
all right.
I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended
Mm-hmm.
up seeing that movie three times in theaters, not necessarily on purpose. Like I
Okay.
went like with I think cross country team just to see a movie once when we had to meet really far away somewhere or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I went with a group of friends because like we're going to see a movie. I was like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll watch that one again. I kind of enjoyed that, and I don't remember the reason for the third time, but like I ended up not on purpose seeing that in theaters three times. To this day, it's at the top. Like there are only a couple other movies I've seen in theaters three times.
Mm-hmm.
I think Simpsons movie I've seen probably three or four when it
Nice.
was in theaters. But like but outside of that, it's like it's so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I that one I enjoyed. And then my other kind of one that another friend of mine will get mad at me about. I did not enjoy Ted. A lot of
Ted.
people just find that the teddy bear that comes to life, it's
Oh,
Seth
Ted.
MacFarlane, the
Yeah.
Family Guy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just find that to be the funniest movie they've ever seen, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, I
I
don't
feel like
know.
it's the Seth
I don't.
MacFarlane of it all. It's like, if you're into Family Guy and his kind of humor, because it is, it's literally the same thing, except it's, talking to the bear instead of animated family. And if you're into his kind of humor, where everything goes, like you'll have fun with it. If you're not, you'll have less fun with that. So,
I want to preface this by saying I have a lot of respect for Seth MacFarlane just as a person for like some of the things he's come out in support of, and just like
mhm,
some of the views he has, and just he is very, very talented. So I want to just be clear that I do have a lot of respect for him.
mhm,
And I do enjoy a lot of his work.
mhm,
That being said, there was a point in time, I don't know if it was 10 years ago or something like that. I think, when Family Guy was kind of at the height of its popularity,
mhm,
when Seth MacFarlane got a little bit out of control.
mhm,
Whereas Seth MacFarlane, it was everybody thought he was the greatest, comedic mind of all time. And there were a couple of issues I had with that. One, because people were starting to transition to saying Family Guy is the funniest thing ever. And like, I'm a big Simpsons fan from, especially the first 10 or 11 seasons of Simpsons.
mhm,
And if you watch early Family Guy, especially like that first season, it's just Simpsons. I mean, it's like genuinely what it is.
mhm,
And they take a lot of influence from The Simpsons. So a lot of times when people would say like, I like Family Guy better, and I kind of unnecessarily would take that a little personally because I'm like, but it's like this is, where it's the same thing. And sometimes just better. But that being said, there are moments of Family Guy that I really enjoyed that are pretty like Seth MacFarlane unique, and the Star Wars that where they made their full movie like Star
Yeah,
Wars. Oh, those are so great. Especially the Empire Strikes Back one was just
yeah, those are great.
phenomenal.
Hmm.
Absolutely phenomenal. But then the other thing on that was I felt like for a little while it seemed like Seth MacFarlane, maybe briefly. I'm not saying this is the case, but this is what it appeared to me.
Hmm.
It felt like Seth MacFarlane was buying into his own hype a little bit,
Hmm.
where he was starting to do a thing where it was like, well, I'm Seth MacFarlane, and so if I say anything, it'll be funny. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what I say, it'll be funny because it's me. And that just isn't the case. And so I think he stretched it a little too far at certain points where he's like, and there are points you can see it in Family Guy where it's like they go on this, 3 or 4 minute song intro on some random, not really that great a song, and you're like, why are we doing this? It's like,
He
oh, it's
does.
because it's funny and random. Is it? No,
Yes,
it's not, man. Like, you don't get to just decide this is funny because you're you.
he does love his
I
songs. Yep.
that yeah, there was that a few year period where it felt like Seth MacFarlane was maybe buying into his own hype. And not that he had hyped himself up, but just everybody else was hyped for him.
I know what you mean.
I
Yeah.
do think since then it's been a little better.
Hmm.
Again, I really do respect Seth MacFarlane a lot. I do enjoy Family Guy a lot.
Hmm.
And especially those Star Wars knockoffs. And anytime they have a Star Wars reference, I remember there was like a kind of an earlier one where they're like, "Man, this sounds worse than the Sand People Choir," and then it just shows a bunch of stuff, like just briefly doing the Sand People thing. Like I just, oh god, it is very very funny. But yeah,
Hmm.
so um, I guess my hot movie take off the top of my head is X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Not that bad. Ted, not that good.
Nice. Okay. All right.
And
And what?
then
Hmm.
Andrew Garfield's first Amazing Spider-Man would have been one of the greatest superhero movies of all time,
Hmm.
except that they couldn't help themselves by throwing a couple of very old superhero movie tropes in there.
Hmm.
If they had gotten rid of those, it would have been maybe the perfect superhero movie.
Yeah.
But there are different points where like when he goes up, he's got Flash on the basketball court, and then 5'10", 6 foot nothing white guy Andrew Garfield suddenly goes up and not only dunks but breaks the backboard with a
Yeah.
dunk. Or there's a football practice going on and he's in the bleachers and he's talking to Gwen Stacy and they kiss or whatever. And while they're doing the kiss thing, the ball comes flying at him. And just to show his spider sense, it's like, you can show the fact that he has spider sense in so many better ways,
Hmm.
but just they had to throw this in there. Ball comes flying at him, and he reaches up and grabs it, and then throws it away.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, that's just unrealistic enough as it is, where he just catches it without even looking, and it's flying at his face. But then on the just very casual toss off, he just because he has his super strength happens to accidentally toss it so strong, and it hits the goalpost and dents the goalpost just by
Yeah.
doing that little motion.
Hmm.
And everybody's reaction in that movie to him breaking the backboard, to him denting the goalpost, isn't, oh my God, no one can, like, that's physically impossible. You're obviously Spider-Man or at least some kind of superhuman.
Hmm.
The reaction by everybody in the movie is, dude, why'd you dent the thing? Why'd you do that? That's not cool. It's like,
Yeah.
man. And it just takes you right out of it because that whole suspense of disbelief. Yeah, I can get into a world where there's superheroes. That's fine, but like people's reactions have to be realistic with it doesn't matter how fantastic something is.
Hmm.
That's the thing that makes a movie believable or not. It's not whether or not this is realistic that could happen. It's what are the characters' reactions to it? Would that be a realistic reaction if that happened in the real world, or if you put yourself in this world, is this how like a person would react? And
Hmm.
that's just not a real reaction. So they had a couple of those moments that it's like, oh, it just takes you right out of it. Like, man,
I
but
know what you.
also,
Yeah.
they make him kind of a skater kid. He didn't need the skateboard thing. I didn't mind it, but I also didn't think it was necessary.
Well, how else
But
would you
yeah,
know
yeah,
he's in high school? Or like, or was it high? Was it even high school in the first movie, or was it like
yeah, it's supposed to be
college?
high
Oh
school.
yeah, it is high
Yeah.
school. Yeah. Like, how else would you know if he doesn't
Um,
have a skateboard, right?
right. Well, I mean, it's not that hard. Go to high school,
Hmm.
be in
Yeah.
the locker room in the hallway with all the lockers. Yeah, I thought that would have been a perfect superhero movie if it weren't for those little things.
Hmm.
But
I
yeah.
definitely don't see it like that. I definitely had more problems with the movie, especially like Andrew Garfield now, we know he's a great actor. But I
Mhm.
never bought him as a Spider-Man. He was great, look, he was great as a Spider-Man, like quippy, all that, like funny. He was not great as Peter Parker because I never bought him as,
I'll give you
he's
that.
supposed to be shy, supposed to be awkward, kind of geeky, and he has this like, charisma around him. I was like, no, like oh yeah, this one does cannot ever get any girls. Yeah, sure. Yeah, this Andrew Garfield looking guy cannot get any girl. Yeah, sure, 100%. Like that just
Okay, here's the
that
thing though.
that just kind of like and they try to make him so awkward, and I'm like, he's still charming. He is still charming.
Yes, but so to get into a little bit of a comic book nerd thing here.
Hmm.
I think Tobey Maguire goes a little too far the other way as far as Peter. I think they make him too shy and geeky and nerdy there.
Hmm.
Because Spider-Man's a smartass because I mean it's a defense mechanism because he's afraid.
Yeah.
But he is still quick and like, Peter Parker's still gonna have those thoughts in his mind.
Hmm.
And as far as not being able to get any girls, Peter Parker gets all the girls. Peter Parker gets Mary Jane. Peter Parker gets Gwen Stacy. Peter Parker gets Liz Allen. Peter Parker gets Carly, who's in a later, comic thing. The only girl that Spider-Man really gets by being Spider-Man first is Black Cat,
Hmm.
Felicia Hardy.
Hmm.
And obviously, with Mary Jane, she learns that he's Spider-Man, blah, 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 blah. But like, Peter Parker may be a nerd, but clearly he's got some charm to him. And
Hmm.
he's clear it's because, he has a history of a lot of girlfriends.
Hmm.
And not like he's not like a manslayer or anything, but it's just like, it's just he can get the girls. So I
No, but
don't
that's
have a
what I'm
problem with
saying.
him being portrayed as somebody that has that charm.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I don't have a
Like
problem
an
with
Andrew
that.
Garfield.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the movie, especially the first one, from what I remember. But again, I've only seen it once because I didn't like. I thought it was fine, but like, my problem was the movie tried to convince us, "Hey, look how awkward he is. Look how unfunny he is." I'm like, is he? Like really? Because I really liked him as Spider-Man. Like I really liked him in when he put on a suit and
Yeah,
when he was quippy. I was like, damn, this is funny. This is good. This is actually working for me. And every time he
I agree
was
with that.
minus the suit when he was just like, high schooler. I was like, that just doesn't work for me. And I think that's why many people love Tom Holland because Tom Holland found that balance where you can kind of get his awkwardness comes more naturally, I guess, when he's not in a suit.
Hmm.
But he can still see he's got the charisma, he's got the charm, but without him pushing it too much. And then he still can be quippy, he still can be funny, he still can be the Spider-Man we know, you know. So like to me, that's why the Tom Holland is the perfect almost the blend of Toby and and Andrew.
Oh, I won't deny that. Tom Holland is fantastic. I wasn't even going to bring Tom Holland into this
Mhm.
because he's kind of the answer to it. But
Yeah, like
I
day
just as
one.
far as Andrew Garfield goes, yeah, I think I mean, even though he is awkward, if he's playing as awkward, yeah, we're supposed to believe that handsome Andrew Garfield is this awkward high
Mhm.
schooler, maybe the high schooler part is like, but he still gets Gwen Stacy. Like
Yeah.
there's got to be something there, like the awkward charm to it.
And he wasn't problem with either of those
I
movies. So like he wasn't as much as I didn't really bought him as a Peter Parker. Like I don't think he was the biggest problem with either of those movies anyway. So
oh I tell me more. Tell me more.
No, it's just there's more as you mentioned, the scenes where he publicly displays his strength, and people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh well, that's I guess that's weird." But you know what? We move along. We don't ask any questions because that's what people do
Right.
when something unusual happens. People just mind their own business, move along. They don't think question like, "Hey, this supposed to be high schooler just bent this,
Hmm.
steel thing. What the fuck?"
Right.
No, but
As far as the Tobey Maguire ones
yeah.
go, I kind of I was always so down on Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and like especially I know everybody trashes the third one, and that's one I'm not going to disagree with. A third Tobey Maguire Spider-Man is just garbage.
Hmm.
But I always thought it was really funny that Topher Grace was cast as Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
And so like he's on the opposite side. I'm like, Topher Grace should be Spider-Man. That would be Spider like at the time, before we've had the
Yeah.
couple of reboots. But before they had the reboots, I was like, what? This is the exact opposite of the way it should be. Like Eddie Brock, like Topher Grace is not Eddie Brock at all.
I
But he'd
could
be
see
closer to Peter
him.
Parker because he's a smart aleck and like he would be perfect. So that always kind of cracked me up. But
I never thought about it like that, but I
uh
could kind of see him as Spider-Man, Topher Grace.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially from that 70s show, like awkward Eric Foreman, that would have been.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I'll say I didn't like I thought Tobey Maguire wasn't that good of a Peter Parker and like as good of a Spider-Man. However, I think Tobey Maguire is a fantastic adult Spider-Man.
Hmm.
When they brought him around for No Way Home, whichever one it was, where they like reunite
Yeah.
them all. His like as an older Peter Parker with the maturity and everything, I was like, oh, he just redeemed all of this, and
Hmm.
it makes me want to go back and watch his other movies too, because now it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, all right, like
Hmm.
this is pretty great. I really appreciated his performance in that, and it just redeemed all of it for me. I thought.
For me, that was the Spider-Man I grew up on, so I thought, nobody's gonna surpass this. And then Tom Holland came around. I
Mhm.
was like, well, actually, you know what, Tom
Yeah,
Holland. But I still have a soft spot for him, and I thought I think many people what they don't like about Tobey is that he is not as quippy in the Spider-Man suit. So like it's kind of the opposite of Andrew Garfield, really, like, where he's like
yeah.
a much better Peter Parker than he is Spider-Man, which I never had a
Like,
problem with him, but again, I grew up watching those two, especially those two movies.
right.
Those are my jam.
Yeah, at the time, I remember seeing him at the time and really enjoying it, except the third one, of course. But,
Yeah,
oh yeah, the 2000s, 2010s, that's another movie that falls in there is Watchmen.
true. That is true.
Because I was thinking because I remember seeing the Spider-Man 3 in the same theater that I saw Watchmen in, and that's, yeah, anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's probably good, right?
Yeah, yeah. And with this, we can move to the underrated part of this podcast, where I'll ask you, Mike, who do you think is the most underrated actor we have right now?
I was thinking about that. That's a really tough one.
I know.
This is gonna sound like a weird choice, but after seeing Iron Claw, I'm gonna say Zac Efron.
Okay. I don't think it's weird. Yeah.
I think Robert Pattinson, when they casted him as the new Batman,
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of people were complaining, and I remember one of my friends that's a really big Batman fan, and I would have expected him to be somebody that was like, ugh, but I remember he kind of said, hey, give it a chance. He's
Hmm.
actually a really good actor. He's
He
just
is.
like ever since his Twilight stuff, it's not as well known. So I don't know if that counts anymore now that he's been Batman.
Hmm.
Um, but that would kind of be my go-to answer. But yeah, after seeing the Iron Claw movie and seeing the way he performed,
Hmm.
I I know Zac Efron is like, the hunk or whatever from,
High School Musical.
when he was younger or whatever, but like he's good.
Hmm.
And then I think Steve Carell and Will Ferrell
Hmm.
are underrated simply because they're so known for their comedy. But when you put them in serious roles, they are excellent.
Yeah, both.
I think they're both underrated for overall ability because
Hmm.
of that. Did you
Hmm.
ever see Stranger Than Fiction?
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one. It's like there's some comedy in it, but like it's a kind of a more serious movie, and he takes a lot more serious of a role. And I thought Will Ferrell was phenomenal in that.
He was.
And Foxcatcher is what it is. I mean, he did a fantastic job in that. Steve Carell did,
Hmm.
but yeah, whenever you put him in a more serious role, he knocks it out of the park. I Did you ever see the show The Patient? It was a more recent one, the Hulu one.
No, not yet.
It's Domhnall Gleeson.
Hmm.
It's I'd say overall show mixed, but Steve Carell's performance in it is phenomenal, and it's a completely serious move or show, limited
Hmm.
series, I guess. But yeah, it's so yeah, that'd be those are my answers. Carell, but answer number one I'll say for now is Zac Efron.
I still haven't seen the Iron Claw, but I've heard the very good things about it, like from pretty much everybody I follow. So I will definitely see it.
So
Yep.
so as a wrestling fan, I knew going in this is not going to be a happy movie
Yep.
because I know the real story of the Von Erich family.
Mm-hmm,
Uh like I remember hearing like, oh, they're making a Von Erich movie? Ooh, ugh.
mm-hmm,
Oh
mm-hmm.
boy. But so yeah, just a warning as a non-wrestling fan, when you go in to watch that, it's very, very good, but it's not gonna be a happy movie.
Oh, I know. I like, and I've also heard from another wrestling fan. I've also heard that they haven't even put everything in that movie that actually happened to that family. That what we see in the
Yeah,
movie is only some of it. And if you go after watching the movie and
right.
actually read up on what's happened to that family, you will discover, oh, there's so much more. But that
Yeah,
movie would have been just yeah.
there's another brother that's involved that they don't even have in the movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and I remember like listening to an interview where they were like, "Hey, like a couple of the family members, some of the kids of the Von Erichs, are like, hey, why don't they have Uncle like whichever one? They don't have him in there." And they're like, "Look, we respect it, obviously, but like we have to tell the story within this set time period, and there's just too much to tell.
No, yeah.
And like, how many tragedies can you really put in there at a
Hmm.
time before it's like, ooh, it's just."
I know.
It's a lot,
I heard
but
again.
it's very
Haven't
good.
seen.
It is very good.
Haven't seen yet, but
Very
I
good.
heard. I heard, so I cannot wait. And Zac Efron, I think it's on a definitely like uphill swing where it's just he's kind of pushing his boundaries. And with this, there were talks about him being possibly Oscar nominated, and many people are still sour about the Iron Claw not getting any recognition whatsoever. So
I'm
yeah,
a
that
little
was
sour
definitely
about it. Yeah.
see, that was definitely a surprise because I like the way many people have talked about that movie, and I was like, well, okay, that seems to be like it's going to be one of those like maybe favorites, maybe like a couple of nominations here and there, and then nothing.
I figured it
I
would at least get nominated. I mean, I'd put it up there with The Wrestler,
mhm,
with Mickey Rourke, when that's a fictional story. I mean, Hollywood loves a true tragedy, story.
not yet.
Uh yeah, and they just didn't, so I don't know.
No,
Whatever.
yeah. Who do you think is the most underrated actress we have right now?
Uh, 10 years ago, I would have told you Leslie Bibb, but I think it's probably just because I thought she was really good looking.
Okay.
Um, there's so many great actresses out there, and I feel like anybody I would name is absolutely not underrated. Like everybody knows who
Mm-hmm.
they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna kind of stretch here and say Deborah Ann Woll.
Oh, nice.
So she's in the Daredevil show as what's her name? Karen in the Daredevil show. She's on True Blood as like the young vampire, like I want to see more of her work. I think
Mm-hmm.
she I feel like she has a lot of range. So I'll say Deborah Ann Woll.
As a person who still hasn't seen
I feel
any,
like I'd have to like actually think about it and like maybe do some research before it, because like, oh wow, there are probably a ton of names I could throw there, but I just can't think of anything off the top of my head. It's kind of
Mhm.
like when you go on Netflix without an idea what you want to watch. Like, what do I want to watch? And you're just browsing, and there's so many options, you just get overloaded. You're like, I don't
Yep,
know.
yeah. No, I think that's a solid choice. As a person who still hasn't seen any episode of True Blood, but I heard good things about it. Like I know that she's most known from there, but I've seen her recently in escape room movies, and she was great in there too. So, like, no, I would like to see more of her.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so,
And I guess Florence Pugh. I mean, I know now she's a star, but like, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said Florence Pugh.
no, yeah, Florence Pugh would be definitely like in that conversation 5 years ago. Now, like I think Dune 2 will solid, them four, Chalamet, Zendaya, her, Florence Pugh, and Austin Butler, they are
Mm-hmm.
the rising stars. They are the like mega stars of should be for the next couple of decades. And I think in 2050, we'll look back at Dune 2 and be like, damn, what a fucking cast. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
just
Dave Bautista and Jeff and
no, yeah,
Josh
and
Brolin in there too.
I was gonna say, and and then those four, and then you account for Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson,
Hmm.
yeah, Batista. Like, there's so many more. There's
Christopher
like
Walken's in it.
Christopher, and
But
I
yeah,
was
as
gonna
far
say
as rising
Walken.
stars, I see what you're saying.
Walken is there. Stellan Skarsgård's there. There's pretty much Leah Seydoux is there. She's awesome. She's a French actress who's been in Bond movies too. Like like that movie, like that's gonna be a who is who in, well, now it even is who is who on in Hollywood. Like, you go down the
Yeah.
list and it's like 15th name is this is still a huge name. Insane.
Hmm.
So, by the way, Dad, who do you think is the most underrated director we have right now?
This is all based on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna say the most underrated directors are actors that are Bryan Cranston,
Mm.
Jason Bateman,
Mm-hmm.
um, the who's the Robin, who's the actress from House of Cards that plays the main
Oh,
Underwood?
Robin. She used to be Penn, but she's no longer Penn. She used to be married to Sean Penn, so she
Hmm.
was. I have it on the tip of my tongue. Robin Wright, I think. Yeah, Robin Wright. Yeah, it used to be
Yes, yeah,
Robin
yeah,
Wright
yeah, yeah.
Penn. Now she's just Robin Wright. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, I always pick out when oh, this person, this actor directed this episode, and I always find
Yeah.
that kind of fascinating. Not necessarily, not like a Jon Favreau thing where he's a director and he puts himself in a movie,
Yeah.
but more like when somebody's an actor and they're just a regular part of that show,
Mm-hmm.
and the showrunners are like, "You want to give it a shot?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And or they just maybe they ask to. And I always notice those. So I feel like there have been a few episodes there was an episode of God, what was that show that Jason Bateman did that was oh
Arrested
gosh.
Development.
No, 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 no. It was the more serious one that was kind of Breaking Bad like. It was a Netflix thing.
Oh, Ozark.
No, but yeah, Ozark. There was an episode of Ozark that he directed, and I think there were a couple where I was like, oh yeah, I kind of noticed. But even with The Sopranos, I think there were a couple episodes that Michael Imperioli directed where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you can kind of see. I think there was like a really, really classic episode that he directed. And then yeah, Robin Wright directed a few episodes
House of
of House
Cards.
of Cards. I remember those being pretty good. So I think I really enjoy when they give actors the opportunity to do something a little different and
Mm-hmm.
try and direct. And so I would be fascinated to see some of them actually do like a full director role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I thought some of those were very good. So I guess that's kind of my answer. Just
It's a
yeah,
nice
because it's
variety.
hard for me to think of a director without thinking, oh yeah, no, they're not underrated. They're well known.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
No, that's a nice, like, variety of different people, different, we find quite a few different groups, talents, genres. No, that's cool. I know the next one is kind of hard, but do you have a movie you feel like is very underrated?
X-Men 3: The Last Stand.
Oh, okay. I should have seen that coming. Yes.
Um, I think Horrible Bosses was pretty good too, just as a
Okay.
comedy. It's not a great movie, but it's fun.
Yeah, and like I've only seen
But
the
yeah,
first one. I've only seen the first one. I had a fun with that. I still haven't seen the second one, but
yeah.
from what I hear,
I
it's
I
pretty
haven't
much the same.
I haven't seen the second one either, but yeah. This is one of those things where I'm gonna think of an hour, like I'll think of an answer in about 6 hours. I'll be like, oh, that would have been perfect.
I
But
know, I know.
But yeah, just for the sake of what I said earlier, X-Men 3: The Last Stand.
All
Boom.
right. We'll stand behind your opinion. I like it. That's a that's a strong man. And what about some TV show? Do you have a TV show you want to shout out as underrated?
Well, pro wrestling,
Pro
any kind of,
wrestling.
whether it's
Mm-hmm.
Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, whether it's AEW, Dynamite, any pro wrestling show,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have that discussion with people and somebody finds out I'm a wrestling fan. And they're like, you know it's fake, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
For the love of God, yes. 90, so if you're in an arena with 10,000 fans,
Mm-hmm.
five of them might think between 1 and 5 of them might think it's at least kind of real. All 5 of them are idiots,
Hmm.
and the rest of them are children.
Yeah.
There are probably some children that kind of don't get, it's like you kind of have to explain that to, when they're younger. But like as an adult and as after you watch it enough, or even if you don't have to watch it that much, when you understand what it is, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
It's, a live stunt show slash play.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, it's like I wouldn't want it to be real because that takes away from so much of it, but like people, ooh, what do you like if it's fake? All right, well, what do you like? Well, I really like Marvel. Okay, well, that's fake. Well, I like
Hmm.
Star Wars. Well, that's fake. I like reality television. Well, guess what? That is also fake.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like it's telling a story. It's the same as, people compare. It's like, well, I like UFC because it's real. Great. You can like that. But
Hmm.
that's a sport. This is a completely different thing.
Hmm.
And my thing I always say is you wouldn't go on Broadway and just complain the entire time like that's not the real Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's like nobody said that it is. It's just a play. You get there, you get into the spirit of things, you
Hmm.
lose yourself in the story for a couple of hours, you suspend your disbelief, and you have a good time. That's exactly what pro wrestling is.
Hmm.
And it's on TV every week. And I think I know that there are a lot of people that have never given it a chance. It's not for everybody, don't get me
Hmm.
wrong,
Hmm.
but there are a lot of people that haven't really given it a chance because they don't understand what it is that would enjoy it if they actually gave it a shot. And I know that because I've seen it happen. I've seen a lot of people that like had nothing to do with it. Even a couple people that are like, yeah, I don't like that. And they're like, okay, I'm kind of getting into this. This is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Most specifically, a college girlfriend used to always make fun of me for liking it, and I saw that there were tickets to a show. And I was like, I'll tell you what, come to a live show with
Hmm.
me. And so we made the deal. She's like, I get to just make fun of you relentlessly after I hate it like I know I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool. And there was a point, a few minutes into the show, she's kind of just got her head on her hand, and she's just, watching the ring. And I thought, like, oh no, she's bored. And I was like, hey, you okay? And she kind of was like, she kind of just waved me off and then went back to paying attention. I'm like, oh, she's into it. And
Hmm.
for the rest of the night, she was really, really into it. And we're driving home, we're talking about the show and how great it was. And then she just went, okay, I didn't hate that like I thought I did. I actually really had a lot of fun. I'm like, yeah. So the ultimate answer to your question is pro wrestling. That's the one I would want to.
Nice.
But other shows I'm gonna throw out there real quick. BattleBots,
Okay.
which is people just literally build robots that fight each other in a little arena,
Hmm.
and it's all about there's a lot of science and nerdy stuff to it and physics to it, but it's goofy and it's a lot of fun. I'll put it on a lot of times in the background when I can't figure out like what to watch or if I just need background noise. It's pretty great, and it's a
Hmm.
lot of it's on Max now. And then I don't know if you'd still include this as underrated, but Prison Break.
Okay.
Prison
Okay.
Break was the first big drama show that I ever really got. Before that, it was all comedies. It was all Simpsons, Seinfeld, that '70s show.
Hmm.
That was just what I was into, I guess. I didn't really expand my taste all that much.
Hmm.
And when I was in college, a little before I met Mike Hilty,
Hmm.
a friend of mine Jesus gave me this box set. He's like, here, watch this show. And I was like, okay, whatever. It was Prison Break, and I just was hooked instantly.
Hmm.
And that's, what got me on the path to liking all my drama. That same friend got me into a lot of the drama shows that I really enjoy and still are some of my favorites until we finally, hopped on the net. Because I hopped on the Netflix train a little late, I think. So it was all DVDs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we were just, he was partially responsible for getting me into Sopranos, half responsible for getting me into Game of Thrones, but he got me into Sons of Anarchy. He got me into Entourage. He got me into Prison Break. He got me into True Blood. He got a whole bunch of shows.
Hmm.
I told him I was going to get him into one. I got him into Breaking Bad. I was pretty proud of that.
Nice.
Uh, but yeah, so I'll say Prison Break, and then give me just a moment.
Sure.
I'm still here. You can probably still hear me. I
Okay.
just want to take a. Oh, that's the other show. Okay, I'm gonna give you one more underrated show I'm a big fan of. It's from the '90s. Beast Wars.
Beast Wars. Okay. I never heard of that.
Beast Wars was a spin-off of Transformers. It was very
Ah.
early, like CGI.
Okay.
And it was initially just kind of a way for them to sell more Transformers toys in the '90s, you know.
Yeah.
Now obviously the catch is okay, they're all animals instead of, machines. But the whole thing is they end up like leaving Cybertron and they get caught in some time warp and so they end up some prehistoric past or something like that. Or just like the time of early man or like cavemen or something like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, they end up the two sides end up crashing, and they scan for life forms. So they're biological, partially biological, but then they have their robot forms and everything too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it costed a lot of money for them to create like they originally had the idea of like we're gonna have all these different ones, like each side's gonna have 20 different whatever, and it was just too expensive to create the graphics for all of those.
I see.
So what happened is they just created like five characters on each side. Well, I mean, it's a whole story as far as what sides they're on.
Mm-hmm.
But, they just created a handful on each side, Maximals and Predacons instead of Autobots and Decepticons. So what that did is it allowed for more space for character development
Mm-hmm.
an actual story. And each character has his own personality that's very unique and very like, okay, yep, that's the kind of thing this character would do. And some of the voice acting is just phenomenal. But
Okay.
it's just I'll still go back and watch that show today because it was one of my favorites back then, and I was like, was it as good as like I thought it was as a kid? Yep. In fact, it's even better.
All right.
I'll tell you what, the character development behind the character Dinobot, some of the best in television.
Nice. I've never heard of
So
it.
that's yeah.
I never heard of
Pro,
it, but
Pro
I'm
Wrestling
intrigued.
and Beast Wars. Yeah, definitely check it out. Pro Wrestling and Beast Wars are going to be my two answers for most underrated TV shows.
And Prison Break.
Yes. Although that one's pretty popular, so I don't know if that one counts
It
anymore.
is. Even though, look, as a person who's seen all the Prison Break, look, all the seasons, it
Mhm.
definitely falls off a bandwagon, like midway season 4, I want to say, where there are quite a few
It's funny you say that. As a
people.
fan, I think there are two different places they could have ended the series
Yes.
instead of going on.
Yeah.
One is at the end of season two, before they have the twist that causes the later
Yep.
seasons. The other one that I think would have been the most appropriate would have been halfway through season four,
Yep.
where
Something
the
happens
thing
there.
because like they have the thing where they're trying to instead of breaking out they're trying to break in. It's like okay, cool twist, and like they have that whole thing. That should have been it, but then of course they have the one twist that sends you spiraling off into, and I know that that's mostly because they were like, hey, we're canceling the show but we're going to let you finish it up, so they had to suddenly throw 3 seasons worth of material into one, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
now this guy's on this side, not that got all convoluted. But I thought in my mind, the show ends there and they
Hmm.
just succeed. Like,
Yeah.
in my own imagination. I agree with you there.
No, from what I remember,
I told you I'm
something
a short story
happens.
long guy, man. I could talk about this forever.
That's fine. Like, something happens throughout season 4, or like halfway through season 4. I'm like, yeah, there are too many dead characters. They came back, to life all of a sudden for my taste. Like,
That
there's,
too.
and if I'm not mistaken, there's not just one. Suddenly it's like, oh, this person is still, oh, this person is alive. This person is, oh my fucking
Hmm.
God. And it's like, that's where
The
usually my patience runs thin with TV shows, is when they bring back characters that we safely presumed were dead, or we actually seen dead,
mhm.
and they're like, no, actually, let me tell you a story how we brought this person back to life. Here is how. And I'm like, you know what? No.
there there's one in particular
Hmm.
where like right at the I don't know if it's just the last episode or the last I think it's the very last episode of season four, because
Hmm.
obviously they had the later one. But there's one that they bring back to life there that I was that killed it for me. And that it was pretty much already dead for me anyway, but I was just like I can't know. This
Yeah.
guy this guy not only was it pretty obvious this guy was just dead, but like he had a dignity, like his death meant something, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And then suddenly it's like, oh, actually he's alive. It's like, oh, but that takes away from the coolness, the great story told, you know.
exactly.
So
Just,
I agree with you.
leave the characters dead in a story, please. If they actually die.
Yeah.
That's about it. No, but Mike, this has been a
I
blast.
was I was cool with Walking
Mm.
Dead with Steve Ewan's character making it. I don't remember his character's name. I have the worst memory now. I hate it. It's as I get into my mid-30s, I'm just like, oh no, I can't remember anything.
Still haven't seen a
And
single
it
episode
freaks
of
me
Walking
out.
Dead,
But
so
okay, well, never mind. Let's go on.
no, it's all right. It's okay. But it is on my watch list actually. That's one of the big
Glenn, that was the
shows.
one. Glenn.
Oh, then okay. That's one of the big shows I still need to watch, and it's all on Disney Plus if I'm not mistaken. So I will get to it. But yeah, I know I'm in for some rough times, I've heard.
I stopped watching after season 8 because it kind of just wrapped everything up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they still have seasons after that,
Yep.
but it didn't leave enough at the end. It's like, oh, this person's a little mad. But otherwise, I was like, I don't know. I just remember watching it. I was satisfied, but then I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a good end of the story. I think this is fine. I have no questions. There's nothing that's worrying me about their, thing in the future. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I think this wraps it up fine. So I just didn't watch after I think it was season 8. But
Yeah.
anyway.
No, again, I cannot wait to actually watch it for myself and see because I know some people finished after season 4, some dropped off after season 6, some after season 8. So yeah, like it's gonna be fascinating for me to see the journey and like to see everything because I'm a completionist. This is the thing. If I start something, I
Mhm.
usually finish it. So I know I'm in for
Yeah.
a long haul. But no, Mike, this has been a blast. So, and I've been asking you a lot of questions for the last 2.5 hours. So, thank you
And
so
I've been giving
much.
you a lot of long answers.
That's perfectly fine. So, before we, go our separate ways, let's flip the tables. Do you have a question or two for me?
You're in Scotland, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So how did you get there? Tell me a little bit.
So
I mean, are
originally
you
from
are you don't sound Scottish.
No, I'm not. Well, now I'm half. So now I got my British passport.
Okay.
But yes, correct. I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from Czech Republic. And
Okay.
what
Nice.
happened there was one day before my 20th birthday, I moved here to study because I applied for a college here, out of high school. And so I
Hmm.
studied here, college and then uni. And I just stayed here to work. And I've been here for this is my 13th year. Soon it's gonna be 13 years for me.
Nice.
So yeah,
Very cool.
that's how I originally, truth to be told, I thought I'm just gonna come here to study for a couple of years, finish my studies, and go back. And I was like, you know what? Why would I go back? And I just stayed here and
Mm.
have now my life here.
Nice.
Hmm.
So then hobby wise, what else? I mean, we've been talking a lot of movies and
Mhm.
TV shows and everything like that. And
Mhm.
so just what other things are you into? I'm gonna kind of flip
Okay.
your opening questions on you.
All right. Again, those are the biggest ones by far, movies, TV shows.
Hmm.
I'm now like I try to read more because I used to read quite a lot when I was a kid. I would be the one who would, go to the library, pick up 10 books and would actually read all of them within a month and get another. Now, yeah, those days are long gone. But now I'm trying to get
Hmm.
back to that. But now I've gotten back to chess and actually like trying to like
Oh, there
study
you go.
quote unquote chess, like like some opening, some theory. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those frustrating hobbies where you think you're good and then you play some games online and you realize how not good you are. And you're like,
Hmm.
it humbles you, but also it keeps you interested where, you analyze the game after and you're like, oh, of course, I should have gone here with my bishop, not there. Like, it's just, there's no more humbling experience than like playing game of chess and thinking, yeah, that's pretty good. And then analyzing the game after and like the computer is saying, what an idiot you are.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think more than two or three, like plan 2 or 3 moves ahead, and I kind of like
Hmm.
whatever I'm playing. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try and do this and this and that to open this up.
Yeah,
But then by the time you do some things, the other person's already done something, so your plan is like it's tough, man. I know what you mean.
it is. It is. Like I'm decent. Like I'm not. No, I'm not. But I used to think I'm much better than I actually was. So now that again, humbling experience. So now I'm trying to actually study some like openings and like some theory behind it. So
Mhm.
yeah, like I
Mhm.
would love in my another life. I would love to be either like filmmaker or chess player, like proper chess player. But too old now.
So the
Especially.
Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it.
There
Enjoyed.
you
No,
go.
that was a
Yeah, I
good
did
show.
too. It was a good show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess just kind of like your first question for me, let's just in a couple sentences describe who Luke is.
Well, like I'm just a usual dude, like your regular dude. Again, move to Scotland. Trying my best to survive here. Have a work in IT. Spend time. We live with my girlfriend of almost 6 years. We live together. We just
Nice.
adopted a cat recently, so we have a tiny cat running
Congrats.
around. Thank you, thank you. So just trying to do our best and trying to survive, as pretty much as everybody.
Yeah. Good deal.
No, yeah, that's any other questions? Have I answered all of them?
I mean, well, we could just sit here and chat all day, honestly, but we're recording for a podcast here, so we should probably wrap it up, right?
No, as long
We've been
as you're
going at it
happy.
for well, we've been going at it for 2.5 hours here, and I do have a couple things I still have to do this morning. So
No, that's fair. That's fair. So thank you so much for your time, Mike. Hugely appreciate it.
eh.
If people enjoyed it and would want to follow you or catch up with you, where could they do that? Do you have any social links?
Oh God, I doubt people would enjoy me rambling on as much as I did, but uh I do plenty of it in the 15 Years Later podcast. So Tim Larson and I have been working on this blog
Mm-hmm.
for almost 3 years now, and we finally started actually publishing it at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That's at 15-years-later.com. That's one and a five, numerical one and five with hyphens.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a new blog entry every other week. And then on off weeks, we have a podcast to accompany the previous blog entry where we talk about kind of behind the scenes stuff. Then we usually just go and ramble off as we're both known to do. But Tim was my favorite teacher in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Just smart aleck, would always make fun of students, but in like an endearing way.
Yeah.
He's a lot of people's favorites. Um, and he and I ended up reconnecting uh, through Facebook just a few years ago, 15 years removed from his classroom. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
let's grab lunch, sometime. And so we went out to a Buffalo Wild Wings and got, wings and drinks and whatnot.
Nice.
And it was going to be a blast anyways. I was like, this is going to be hilarious. He's going to give me a bunch of shit and I'm going to give it right back because he can't do anything about it now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get in trouble for it. So I knew it was going to be a lot of fun. But as we were sitting there just getting to know each other as human beings, we started
Mm-hmm.
to realize like, oh, there are a lot of parallels here between our personalities and our just our starving artist creative types and everything like that. And then just some life path things that we've taken and just choices we've made, stuff like that. And then it got weirdly specific. Like, he's also doing the baseball stadium tour.
Ah.
I was telling him about that, and he cut me off halfway through. He's like, "Hey, I'm on this too, right?" And so, a couple hours into that whole thing, he just said, "Hey, we're writing a blog together. It's going to be about a
Mm-hmm.
teacher and a student, sharing stories and realizing they have a bunch of common." And
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yeah, I'm in. So we started working on it, and so we'd meet every once in a while. Well, then what happened was, as we were working on this initially, we became friends, and that whole thing developed because then he helped me through a few rough times in life, and I think I kind of reminded him of why he does what he does as far as being a teacher,
Yeah.
and so like now we're actually helping each other through life. So it's mostly just an overall arc.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an anthology where we're telling stories in a similar way to the way that we told each other stories that first day. That was kind of the vibe we were going for. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also the overall arc, especially as it gets later into the series, which we haven't released yet. Um, where we he kind of helps me find my voice
Mm-hmm.
again. And it's just about that whole development. It's about that interpersonal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, as much as is the stories. So we kind of thread it together, but it's just stories from our past and just our lives. And then we kind of thread it together at the end. But yeah, I would really encourage everybody 15-years-later.com. It's for the 15 years later blog. Read the blog. There's another, we're just getting started. There's another one that's going to be probably 23, 24 entries total. But we just released our 5th one this past Wednesday. And if you enjoy that, then if you made it this far through this podcast listening to me just ramble on, then maybe you'll enjoy the 15 Years Later podcast, where Tim Larson and I talk about the blog and just a bunch of other stuff. That's available on Spotify and Apple and everywhere you get your podcast. And it's all, we're also partnered with the SPDM crew. So yeah, check it out. 15 Years Later, look it up. And once again, 15-years-later.com. We're also on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. I think most Instagram's the one we have the biggest presence on. Not that it's that big, but it's at 15 Years Later TM, also a numerical 1 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah, 15-years-later.com. Read the blog, and then if you like it, listen to the podcast. Thank you.
All those links will be obviously available below. And as always, you can find me lostinmovies.co.uk, where it's my blog where I post reviews twice a week, or on Letterboxd in Movies Lost. And as always, as Mike mentioned, this is also part of SPDM Crew Podcast Media. Also, big shout out to HiFlyer Creative for designing my logo. To see what else they have happening, visit HiFlyerCreative.com. So here's that. That's the end for today. So until next time, bye-bye.